All right, hello everyone and welcome to the July 17th Board of Supervisors meeting. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and tonight we are starting with a special presentation, and I will hand things over to Chief Beatty.
Thank you for the board and the public's time. If I could just take a second right before we start to recognize the passing of an Upper Merion officer over the weekend in an off-duty incident. Troy Marcel Nicholson passed away, 32-year-old officer. He did a great job in the community. He started out in Royersford Borough, Amity Township, and then joined Upper Merion in 2017. It's a tragic loss. I've met him on different events. We border with Upper Merion, working together, the officers do, but also he was just out in the public and went out of his way to treat people as we would like. So if I could ask for some moment of silence for Officer Nicholson. Thank you very much. It was a tragic weekend throughout the area for some officers in the community, so we appreciate the public support and what we do, and thank you for that moment. We've had some movement in the police department, and which movement doesn't come easy. You have to have processes and testing and evaluations. Most recently, we're here tonight for the promotion for Lieutenant Jim Slavin. If Jim could come on up to the front, I'm going to put you in front for a minute by yourself here first. Put you on the spotlight, but one step up, please. And keep stepping. One of those things, we have some unsung heroes. Very fortunate to be the chief of this department. We had 5 candidates put in for this process. And when you get down to it, all 5 of them bring something special to the table in their day-to-day supervision, who they are and what they do for us in the community and then for the department and the township. What we did, we brought in our testing consultant, brought in a lieutenant from Philadelphia, a chief from Bucks County, and the consultant is actually a very well-respected teacher and educator at the FBI Academy and does the testing process for us. The panel interviewed the candidates on their situational questions, leadership, ideas, philosophies, and also about our personnel policies and whatnot. It's an intense process. It's a grueling interview, but once again, sometimes it's a way for the officers, the candidates have to prepare and present themselves to the board. Sergeant Slavin was our detective sergeant most recently, serving in that capacity. He's done a great job with the detective division. Most recently, he helped out with our accreditation process to help us get through that. He's a 21-year veteran of the department, and prior to that, he worked in patrol division and a corporal. Previously, from 2004 to 14, he served as a crisis negotiator for our emergency response team. Lieutenant Slavin took on some of the FBI leadership supervision programs, going through those different programs to help get himself prepared for this opportunity to serve as the administrative lieutenant for the department. If we could, I'd like to introduce his wife Patty, his son Jimmy, and Sophia are also here. but I think it'd be appropriate if we could have Patty please present Lieutenant James Slavin, his badge. As you can see, there's a big support from not just our department, but from our counterparts throughout the region. I thank them all for coming for this, taking the time out of their schedule to be here. While I still have the microphone, if I could indulge for one more minute. The reason this opening came to light was we have a retirement pending within the next couple weeks. Captain Tim Brown, a 29-year veteran of the department, the son of a former lieutenant of the department, is going to be retiring towards the end of the month. His wife and family, daughter moved down to Georgia, and Lieutenant, his wife, and basically they're going to make that move, going south. But they've been a great addition to our department. He's been a super asset. With his retirement, that opened up some other movement, and that's why the lieutenant spot for Jim Slavin became available. I think Tim, here he is. He's hiding out away. Please, if you could, folks, Tim is where. As a captain would do, he didn't want anything. He really didn't want it, and we kind of had to drag him here for Lieutenant Slavin's promotion to get him here. But that's just the kind of leader he has been for us in this community and the Chester County region. He's the head, one of the commanders for the emergency response team. He's our organizer, planner, trainer. He keeps the officers on point with the training regimens they do to keep us up to speed. His leadership since I've been here has been nothing but stellar. I couldn't do what I do as a chief without good support from the command staff, and by far I had one of the best captains I've ever met in the business. So congrats, Tim, on a great job, a great career. Best of luck with the future, and I thank again the public and the board for their time, and appreciate everybody else for coming out. Thanks again, folks.
Madam Chair, can I make a quick comment? First of all, congratulations to Lieutenant Slavin. It's great. We're gonna, as far as Captain Brown goes, I'm very sorry to see him leave. We've had a lot of great people come through on our command staff with our police department. Captain Brown being one of the top. I think I first met Captain Brown, I think it was about 9 years ago. He was delivering a package to my house. I hadn't shoveled my driveway yet. I was a young sergeant coming down the driveway. I was scared to death he was going to slip and break his leg. And ever since then, he's just been a tremendous person to have on the police department. Just really going to be missed.
All right, thank you, Chief Beatty, and congratulations. We will move on to the next part of our agenda, which is the announcements. There is a joint Easttown and Tredyffrin Township Board of Supervisors meeting scheduled for Monday, July 31st, 2023 at 7 p.m. at the Tredyffrin Township Building for Phase 2 of the Fire EMS study. The Board of Supervisors meeting scheduled for August 21st is rescheduled for August 28th. And finally, we would like to remind residents that the Chesterbrook Boulevard Leaning Wall Replacement Project will be starting this month and will last through the end of 2023. Work will be on Chesterbrook Boulevard, the southbound lane over Wilson Run. between Adams Drive and Wilson Road. The project will involve upgrades to the existing stormwater system and replacement of 2 retaining wall structures on the upstream and downstream ends of the culvert carrying Wilson Run underneath Chesterbrook Boulevard. Please be patient and allow additional time, as there will be some lane restrictions during the construction period this summer and fall. We move to the approval of minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the June 20th, 2023 public meeting?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We move to township business, and prior to this meeting, our board met in executive session to discuss personnel and legal matters. All right, supervisor liaison reports. We will start with Supervisor Miller.
Thank you very much. The zoning hearing board met on the 11th of July. They, to announce the results of the hearing concerning the Wawa on Sweetsford Road. They declined both the use and parking variance requested by the applicant. The next meeting will be the 27th of July. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Humble.
Thank you. The Parks and Rec Board met on Wednesday, July the 12th, and amongst other things, we discussed the possibility of doing a new master plan for Friendship Park. There's various changes that the board has discussed and want to include, so that's one thing we do want to talk about with the Township administration is how do we do that, and do we need to do that for certain changes? Parks and Rec Board would like to make a presentation to the Board of Supervisors at its August 28th meeting regarding some of these ideas that it's been working on. Not asking for an approval or anything, just doing a presentation of what has been discussed, similar to when the EAC comes forward to the board or any of our other groups. Also under discussion at this past meeting was a concept for a 9-hole Frisbee golf, what do you call it, like a park or a course within Mill Road Park. Originally, the person heading up this idea, he lives in East Town. From what I understand, this idea hasn't been taken to East Town. But he first came to Tredyffrin Township wanting to put in an 18-hole course at Wilson Farm Park, and that was quickly declined. So then he wanted a 9-hole course at Wilson Farm Park. So again, that was declined. So now they're proposing for Mill Road Park. They think because it's a bigger park and has less already contained within the park, that maybe that's a good idea. So they are seeking to make a presentation to the board at our September meeting. So I believe our Parks and Rec coordinator will be contacting Dr. Gussie about possibly getting that on the agenda. Some of the things we did discuss with the person presenting for this 9-hole golf course was that it would probably need a feasibility study, and that they would need to pay for the feasibility study. Whether or not the EAC, our Environmental Advisory Council, has considered what they might want to do within Mill Road Park and what their opinion is, what the usage might be, and how it might overlap with other things that happen in that park already, such as the Conestoga Girls cross-country team practices there regularly on those paths, and there's already a proposed bike park idea for that for Mill Road Park that's being considered. And then there's the regular soccer fields and such for the regular seasons there. So that'll be coming up, and hopefully we'll get any ideas or any opinions from those of you who are in the audience or those of you who are watching. Next, one of the things we discussed was we received a letter from a township resident complaining about the deer and how much the deer have eaten the I guess, the underforest, the brush and everything in our different open areas within the township, and how they eat her plants and her flowers, and can the township do more about controlling the deer? Well, the deer ate all my roses this past week too. And I don't live next to one of these open areas, but one thing I do want to make clear for everybody is that the township does use several different hunting clubs that have regular seasons that hunt the deer. We try to cull the herd as much as we can. If the deer don't come to where the hunters are, the hunters can't take them out. So we know that it's a big problem. The township continues to do what it can. Then we had another discussion regarding Tea Garden Park and the off-leash permissions there, to update anybody who's here or watching. On May 16th, a woman and her dog were attacked by a pit bull, unprovoked. Her dog needed a great amount of surgery, and she needed medical attention as well. The owner of the pit bull got her dog and left the park without giving her name or her information to anybody, and so we were unable to determine who that was. However, 5 days later, on May the 21st, the same woman with her pit bull returned to Tea Garden Park and again let her dog off leash. And again, the dog attacked another dog, but attacked another woman much more severely. From what I understand, the victim still has no feeling in her arm that the dog attacked. And again, the pit bull owner tried to leave the park with her dog before having to identify herself or give any information, but this time, thank you very much to all the regular dog park users, they wouldn't let her leave. They were filming her, and they filmed her car and were shouting at her that they'd already called the police and that she was going to have to stay. So she did stay, and that's how she was identified. And then the police could take over, as well as advance out to Brandywine SPCA. The rest of the matters that SPCA has jurisdiction over, such as determining whether it's a dangerous dog, any other citations that they would do that the township doesn't do, such as being off leash, being in Tea Garden Park without a license to be there. Even if your dog's off leash, they have to still have the license. And that way we could get for the victims the information on the dog's shots, etc. Approximately 1 month later, on June 16th, the woman who owned the pit bull, her children apparently let the dog out of the front door, and no part of their yard is fenced. They don't have a fence. And this time the dog ran out to the street and attacked a woman and her husband who were out walking the dog. It jumped up on the woman and pushed her down, and then the dog was very badly attacked, and it also bit the husband's hand and his face. And a Good Samaritan stopped her car and got out to try to go help, and she got bit by the dog as well. So the dog was stopped at some point. I don't have the details on that. But again, this matter was referred out to Brandywine SPCA, and in the meantime, the owner was trying to go ahead and adopt the dog out to somebody else, or see if rescue in another state would take the dog, and they were unsuccessful there. So before the dog could be adjudicated as a dangerous dog, the dog was euthanized on June the 23rd. So I go through all this to make sure that people who know there's been a dog biting at Tea Garden Park is no longer a threat. But I also bring it up for another reason, that some of the facts that came out during this disturbed me about Brandywine SPCA having the jurisdiction to determine whether this was a dangerous dog or not. And I don't know if there's anything we can do about it. Probably Chief Beatty or maybe Pat McKenna will have to help on this, but Brandywine SPCA has the jurisdiction to determine whether it's a dangerous dog or not. I thought that adjudication would have happened after the second attack, the May 21st attack. And I don't know why that didn't happen. At that point, that dog had attacked twice unprovoked. It, had an owner that was not following the rules for having dogs in the park. And it turned out Brandywine SPCA was also the same rescue that gave the dog to this family only a few months earlier. So in looking at this, I do wonder, did they worry that they might have some culpability or some liability on their hands, and that's why they didn't adjudicate this dog as dangerous right away? They were hoping something else would change, or they were worried if they did that right away, somebody would come back and say, why did you sell us or give us a dangerous dog? But certainly, had they done something like that, that attack out on the street would not happen. So, 3 other people and another dog would not have been attacked and severely had that happened. So, it seemed to me like a conflict of interest. So I don't know if there's a way, is this like getting the judge to recuse himself, or is there a way we can ask for a different group to be the adjudicating group when, like SPCA, Brandywine SPCA is the one that actually adopted out the dog. And so recently before, like I get it if they adopted out the dog 2 years or 3 years prior to anything happening, their culpability is gone. But I'm just wondering if there's something we can do about it. Does the rules or does our contract give us an alternate solution to hear these matters?
Just from my knowledge and education, what the rules were followed for the timelines and the notifications in Chester County. We followed the guidelines that were set up in the process that's done across the board. We continue to look into, we can find if there's, the situation, we can look into, see if there any other changes can be made, but the timelines and the things that were done were handled in accordance with a defendant's right for addressing the issues. So that the timelines would be something that any citizen would have by the time a process is filed to have the hearings and whatnot. So to the best of my knowledge, everything went along with each incident and ramped up. And unfortunately, the third incident was very unfortunate, but they're all unfortunate. But the bottom line is that we were on top of it, doing what we could, enforcement-wise, working with the partners that we had at the time. And I think we'll continue to look, if there is any other better ways, we'll get back to you and see what can be handled. But we have had good experience, and Brandywine Valley is the regional provider for these services. And like you explained very succinctly, we take care of the violations we are allowed to take care of within the confines of our jurisdiction in Tredyffrin Township. The park violation, the leash law violation, and we were on top of that.
So after the May 21st incident, we're doing everything on time. What would have been the soonest that Brandywine would have heard and decided on the matter?
I don't have the timelines right in front of me, ma'am, so I can get that for you at a later time.
I'm just wondering if the third attack happened before that hearing could have even come forward. But then, a month between attacks seems to me like a really long time to decide what to do with a dog that's biting. So I guess we'll consider this an ongoing matter until we can find out with you what more we could do.
Yeah, Chief, I do recall I think we briefed the board on it. After the second attack, they had to wait a certain amount of times before euthanizing the dog due to any possible rabies. So and that's when the third one happened during that time. It was going to be euthanized, but they had to hold off until that test was complete, which is, I think it's 5 days or 3 days, whatever it takes to get that test completed. So that's unfortunately was the time frame where the act took place.
I understand that, but after the second attack, which was on the 21st, then the clock would have started rolling from the 21st? So that should have been completed before the end of May.
In reference, Brandywine is the only one through the county that we're contracted with. theoretically, if you could find another agency that would do it, which there aren't any. That's why Brandywine is the contracted service agency for the Chester County. So we all use Brandywine for these type of incidents.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, is there something to do when it seems like there's an apparent conflict of interest, which it looks like to me. So I don't know, maybe we can look into that more. So that's my update on the dog issues at the park, other than at our last Parks and Rec meeting. And since these two attacks had happened at Tea Garden, I'm very happy that our Public Works changed the gate, one of the gates on the small play area, the picnic area, and where the kids' small playground is. So it's no longer just going to be a swing latch gate. They have to actually get there, somebody has to actually move it with their hand. And additionally, at the trailhead of Old State Road, they extended the fence, and they made it to where now to get in that area, it's not just open, but it's closed by a fence. So people can't just walk with their dogs straight from the parking lot into that playground and picnic area. I say that, and our Parks and Rec coordinator reported that now we're getting lots of complaints, and I've gotten some directly to myself, that now the dog owners are using that picnic and play area as their enclosed dog park for small dogs. So that's still not okay. That's not what we want. And, it's intended to provide a safe place for people, kids to play and eat, and somebody shouldn't have to ask the owner to please take their dog out. The dog should never be in there. So that's all for my report. Thank you, Supervisor.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Wysocki.
The Tredyffrin Libraries Board met on June 22nd and discussed building infrastructure, operational, financial, fundraising, and program matters. Rob Rose, Libraries Board Treasurer, reported that the libraries continue in good financial condition. Here are some more meeting highlights. Thank you to Joanna Pachulo. She is a Wilsontown resident board member of the Libraries Board for her many years of service to the Libraries Board and serving as an officer for a number of years. She's leaving the board for family reasons. Thank you, Johanna. A note about rain. On Sunday, July 9, the library suffered significant damage from our deluge on that day. The front roof partly caved in and water came through, and there was significant damage. And through the efforts of library staff, Township Public Works staff, and others, the library didn't miss a beat. It opened the next morning on July 10, continuing to provide community service, and remains open while the cleanup and the roof and HVAC work continue. Next, door count and circulation at both the Tredyffrin and Paoli libraries, as well as program in-person and virtual attendance, continue to increase. That's really good news. Next, the board also discussed plans for an LBGTQ plus Pride in the Park event on September 24 in the park area directly adjacent to the library. Lastly, the Friends of the Tredyffrin Library continue to re-energize library program book sales following the post-COVID lull, noting that the June book sale was strong, as were Amazon sales. The next meeting of the library's Board of Trustees is on July 27. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Freed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Historical Commission has started work on a strategic preservation plan with a consultant, and the work is being funded by the Certified Local Government, or CLG, grant from the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission, and the plan is expected to be complete by the end of this year. The Commission's Love Your Place program kicks off on Sunday, September 10th with a neighborhood walk. The walk will center on Walker and Broadmead Roads and Redcoat Lane. Neighbors from around some of the township's most historic farms will learn about the 4 Continental Army generals who quartered there Today's house owners and commission interpreters will share the stories of these men and farms during the Revolutionary War during 1777. And later tonight, we're going to take at least some initial action or continued action on a motion for the Historical Commission to have associate members. The Commission's program is expanding and volunteer associate members are needed. The Associates program is basically identical to what was enacted by the Environmental Advisory Commission or Council. Associate will help research and develop future historic events. The comment from the Historical Commission Chair is that the need is great now with the upcoming 250th commemoration of the Declaration of Independence in 2026. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Basker.
Thank you, Chair Gussie. So I'd first like to thank Supervisor Wysocki for covering for me at the Library Board of Trustees meeting. I had a family event, a happy family event, wedding-related event, so thank you for covering. So I'm the liaison to the Traffic Committee and the Library Board of Trustees and the Environmental Advisory Council. The Traffic Committee met on Wednesday, June 21st, and these are the highlights. So there was discussion about speed concerns on South Valley Road and Circular Avenue that remains I think the most charitable word I can use for it is an uncomfortable intersection. So although speed limits have been reduced, there are still continuing concerns about the safety of the intersection as a consequence of limited visibility and drivers speeding down from the intersection of South Valley Road with Lancaster Avenue. The solution would seem to be a four-way stop sign, but at this point, South Valley Road is a PennDOT road, and they seem to need more data to agree with it, so it remains a work in progress. So this is not something the discussion has been going on for years and probably will continue, but eventually, hopefully, we'll get to a resolution. Then a resident requested a crosswalk across Chesterbrook Boulevard at Chestwold Village and Forge Mountain. And because of visibility and driving speeds, it's not a good place to cross. And but as there is a bus stop, the township will investigate whether they can put like a bus stop sign ahead. There's a school bus stop, whether they can put like a school bus stop ahead sign. But it's probably not a good place for a regular crosswalk. And then there are continuing issues with the traffic around our schools. And in this case, on Cloverley Road, with parents picking up from Hillside Elementary School. And until more parents have their children take the bus or at least carpool, these issues will continue. And I have to say that, the traffic police staff were there, and they're as frustrated as anyone else because they tell parents to move on, and as soon as the traffic people move on, the parents come back, and some of the parents are not being as careful as they should be with regard to residents and other children. And then there was also a presentation of Conestoga High School's plans for the new sports fields. And they also included plans for pickup and drop-off areas within the school grounds rather than on Irish roads. And the Tredyffrin Police Department's view is that unless the school district enforced picking up and dropping off on the grounds, parents are likely to continue to pick up and drop off on Irish Road. So again, what we'd really like to do is encourage our parents to be good citizens, and hopefully that'll happen someday. So the next meeting of the Traffic Committee is on Wednesday, September 20th. Oh, and by the way, I did not mean that as a derogatory comment about the parents. I think that 99.9% of the parents are actually responsible, but there is probably a small number that cause problems for everyone else. Moving on to the Environmental Advisory Council, they met on June 27th, and these are the highlights. So using a grant from Essentials, which is the foundation arm of ACWA, Tredyffrin Public Library and the EAC are collaborating on a planned speaker series. an educational read-aloud for children, and an EAC-led rain garden library tour. The first presentation on how to design and build a rain garden is at the Stratford Library from 6:30 to 7:30 on Wednesday, September 13th. More details to follow from the library. EAC member Jonathan Wilson has plans to install Mayfly do-it-yourself temperature loggers for the Valley Creek Restoration Project, and we'd like to thank Green Valley's Watershed Association for sponsoring the internet access to provide remote access to that data. And Amber Levy and Tracy Viola met Hillary Mallory of the Township about reducing single-use plastic waste from the 5K races. And Tracy worked with Hillary on a handout to give to the organizers to try and get them to reduce single-use plastic waste. Resident Chuck Cutshall has kindly volunteered to fund another 10 trees for Wilson Farm Park, for which we're very grateful. There was discussion as to whether they might also accept Friendship Park as a home for some trees, and also whether the EAC was stretched thin on commitments to plant trees this fall. I would like to know, our residents to know, that the EAC is perhaps the township's most active and energetic volunteer-powered group, and I would encourage more residents to volunteer and get involved, and please start by attending the meetings. Then a couple of other notes. Krabby Creek is now an official eBird hotspot, and Tredyffrin Township is a great place for birding. So, as you're walking around, instead of take out the earbuds and start listening to the birds, it's a great thing to do. And invasive plants continue to be a concern, and it's a continued area for discussion about control. And knotweed in Maisie B. Hall Park is just the tip of the iceberg, and perhaps the most egregious symptom of the invasive plants. So this is something that we're going to be dealing with for years to come. The next meeting of the EAC is on Tuesday, August 22nd, as the EAC does not meet in July. So thank you, Supervisor.
All right, thank you. Now we will move to the motion to approve proposal from Stringbrook for general ledger software. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Staff is looking for approval to move from our current general ledger software, which is a Munis, it's called, it's an on-site hosted product. We are looking to move to Springbrook, which would be hosted in the cloud. I've sat through a couple of demos. I've been impressed with what they have, and I believe it'll help improve the efficiency and productivity of the finance department. I believe it'll streamline month-end and reconciliations, and so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? All right, any board comment? Any public comments or questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to approve a proposal from McMahon Associates for emergency bridge repairs over the Warner Spur. Mr. Burgo.
Madam Chair and members of the board, the proposal before you tonight is from McMahon Associates. Give a little bit of background on this. The Warner Spur Bridge is one of two bridges that are located over the section of the Warner Spur. It's an old railroad line that is no longer in service, but the two bridges are owned by Tredyffrin Township. This one is over Little Valley Creek, since Hurricane Ida, Tropical Storm Ida, when it came through back in September of 21, the township was made aware and had followed up with some inspections, emergency inspections on the structure. The bridge has suffered some severe stone loss, and that's impacting its structural stability. So we've been working with FEMA U.S. Fish and Wildlife and DEP. On several items since that point in time, we had to do a wetland delineation and survey required by FEMA and DEP. We had to get PIND clearances, and most importantly, we had to go through a bog turtle process to get clearance with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So there was a variety of work that we were doing there, and we're currently working with DEP on our permits for the project for repairs. We've been working with FEMA for some time, and just recently they did obligate some additional, actually substantial funding for this particular project for recovery from Ida, $289,000 to be exact. And this proposal tonight is for $84,160 from McMahon Associates. It's for engineering services for repair, rehabilitation work for this bridge, and when we're finished with that, we'll be going out to get estimates for the construction of these repairs. We do have this identified in the 2024 budget for work, but given the level of impact, we're looking to move forward with this work tonight. Like we said, we did get money from FEMA, and they are looking for us to move forward with using that money to make these repairs before the bridge gets any worse.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a second? Second. Any board comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we move to the motion to accept the termination of land development plan and stormwater best management practices operations and maintenance agreement between Tredyffrin Township and Echo Sweetsford Associates LP. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you, Dr. Gussie. The board, or at least some members of the board, may recall back in 2015, 2016, the Sweetsford Plaza Shopping Center had an out parcel that they were looking to have developed, and actually came through the Planning Commission and had gotten that approved. That project has not moved forward. The property owner's lender in this case has requested of the property owner that they enter into the agreement that we have here, because they have documents that are recorded on the property to fix the title on the property and ensure the lender that the project is in fact terminated and not moving forward. We recently did this exact same form agreement for Lifetime Fitness for their daycare center. So we have reviewed and drafted that document, and we ask for the board's consideration of approval this evening.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? All right. Any board comments?
Yes, I have a question for Mr. McKenna. If you can just explain that a little easier for residents to understand and such, why we would terminate their plan and their stormwater best management practices. Is that because it's being replaced by something better, or?
The project is not moving forward. They're not building the structure, so there will be no improvements. It's simply to clear up with the lender, to ensure the lender that their letter of credit will not be called upon because the project is not moving forward.
Okay. There's no replacement?
Not at this time. Nothing's been proposed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any public comments or questions? All right. Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to authorize staff to authorize and receive bids for single hauler trash and recycling services. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Just a little bit of background on this. It started as an initiative of the EAC, and then over the last several months, with a lot of the issues that we've been having with some of the providers in the township, we've been receiving a lot of feedback from residents, just unhappy with how things are going. And so, the board authorized staff to begin working on this process again a couple months ago. We're here tonight really because of the work of two of our staff members, Robert Emanuel and Gabrielle Ignori. They put a ton of work in this, so I can't thank them enough. But just some of the highlights that are included in the RFP. We have two methods that we're looking at. One method, which would be where the hauler will bill and collect. That would be the preferred method from our standpoint. But in trying to contain costs as much as possible, we're also looking at a method of which the township would bill and collect for the services. On top of that, collections would be once a week for solid waste and recycling, once per month leaf waste from January through September, and twice a month from October to December, so, to keep up with demand. We would have 2 Christmas tree collections, twice monthly bulk collections, and, we would be including the receptacles for trash and recycling as well. The timeline at which we expect this to go, this process from here on out, we're looking to distribute the RFP next week after just tying up some loose ends. We're going to host a pre-bid meeting on August 14th here. Bids will then be due August 24th, which will allow us time to review and make a recommendation to the board at our September 18th board meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
All right, thank you. We'll start with a motion. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. All right, and I just want to thank our staff for the amount of work they've already put into this. Personally, ultimately, I think it's the right move to move towards a single hauler contract for our township. And I think it's really important that we get it right to have the best service for our residents. Do we have any board comments?
Yes, Chair Gussie, so...
No.
So, this is a good move, but a little bit of background. I think right now we have a free market system in the sense that anyone who has enough insurance can come in and get a permit to haul trash in the township. Now, hauling trash is, and then residents can switch at any time, from one hauler to another hauler. And trash hauling is increasingly a capital-intensive and knowledge-intensive business. And one of the things that this results in is that since the time frame of people being able to switch haulers is so short, it's basically resulted in a race to the bottom. So what we've been having is, someone comes in, they bid low prices in order to get the business, and then after that they have to drive up either the service goes down, the prices go up, and this is a cycle that I've seen repeated in the township. So what we're trying to do with the new approach is still maintain a free market system in the sense that haulers will be able to bid for business. But by setting up, let me back up a second. With the present system, the township has no leverage over the haulers, and about the level of service. So what we're trying to do is move to more of a free market system, but set up a time horizon where that's more in line with the capital investments that haulers would need to make in order to maintain a level of service. And at the same time, by setting up a single hauler contract, it gives the township more leverage over the haulers in order to maintain a level of service. So if you read the details of the RFP, if they don't pick up, there are fines. And again, there are a number of things in the contract that we believe will be aimed at providing better long-term service by setting up the contract this way. Now, these are some immediate benefits. I do see some longer-term benefits as well, which is that by having a single hauler, we reduce the number of trucks on the road coming around to pick up trash and the number of times they come. We can also ask for levels of service for things like composting. Now, this is not in the contract for right now, but we're asking those who are bidding to tell us what they want to do. Again, if you look at other things like, electric trucks, picking up trash is actually the perfect application for an electric truck because a truck picking up trash is starting and stopping all the time. So that's regenerative braking, which goes back in. So this is actually an excellent application of an electric vehicle. However, the technology is not quite there yet. So one of the things we're doing in the proposal is asking them what their plans are. So I think that this is a good plan. I would like to thank staff for all of the work that they put into it. There's a tremendous amount of detail. And I would also like to thank Susanna Hay of the EAC, who initially, I think it was probably like a year ago, maybe longer, brought this to the attention of the EAC and the township. So we're kind of moving forward with that. So anyway, those are my comments. Thank you, Chair Gussie.
Thank you. Any other board comments?
Madam Chair, so I first of all, I want to thank staff. I want to thank the EAC. I know a lot of work went into this. I understand that there are certainly some benefits of doing this. I do have some concerns, and they're really not concerns that are based on the township or anything the township did or is going to do. It has to do with just the nature of what I'm seeing in the industry right now. My concern is that based on, and I think we've seen more of it post-COVID, and I think we're seeing it in all sorts of industries where it's very difficult to get workers. I think the trash industry is one of the folks that have been having trouble getting workers. I think what we're seeing is that these trash companies are having trouble, whether they're single hauler, whether they're privately contracted, in consistently making their rounds and picking up trash. And what we're finding is that they're having problems, and not everywhere. Frankly, it's funny. I have a particular company that we switched over to recently. If I look on some of social media, I hear that there's problems. I haven't had any problems, but I'm aware of other areas where there are problems, both in the private contract and in the single hauler. And my concern is that right now this is a private relationship. It's a little bit different than the Pottery Barn rule. It's not if you break it, you buy it. It's almost as though we're buying something broken. And I'm concerned about that because we're now we're inserting ourselves into something where people are going to be upset, what we're seeing, and then they're going to be looking to the township, more than they even are now, to say, what are you going to do about this? I do understand the theory that if you have a contract with a single hauler, you have certain enforcement provisions. You can use those enforcement provisions. You can potentially switch haulers. You can potentially fine them. You can, make them do certain things. It's nice in theory. I think it's difficult to implement. I'm not saying you can't implement it, but it's not. It's not as easy as just saying we have some language here in the contract and so you better do it, or tomorrow we're going to be going with someone else. It's a much more involved, expensive, labor-intensive, resource-intensive process. All that said, as I said, I do think there are some benefits. I have no problem with us going out with an RFP and seeing what the prices are. Obviously, one of the big benefits I would like to see for the public, if we're going to go down this road, is that there's a reduction in cost for, at least on average, to individual homeowners. I don't know that we're going to see that. I'd like to see, as we go through this process, exactly what the environmental benefits are. I know that there's some. I don't know that we have so many trucks on the roads that going from 2 or 3 haulers to 1 hauler is going to make that significant a difference on our road wear and tear, pollution, other things like that. I know that there's some aesthetic issues with people in certain areas having trash cans out every day because you have so many different companies. I get that, and I think that's aesthetics is. I don't want to minimize that. Aesthetics and where you live is an important thing. So, as I said, I have some concerns. I don't have a problem going through the RFP. I particularly appreciate. I know a lot of work went into this from both the EAC and staff, and I really do appreciate that. I don't want my comments to be taken as though I don't appreciate the work that went into this. I have some concerns, and I'm hoping that those concerns at least can be addressed as we go through this process.
I would like to add one comment, if I may, which is that I'm actually one of the residents whose trash hauling costs are going to go up. And that's because what we do right now is we have a service with we basically buy these labels from a hauler, and every 4 to 6 weeks we put out a 33-gallon bag of trash and we put the label on it and they pick it up. So I know that my costs are going to go up, but I think overall as a township we will benefit from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board comments?
Yes. One thing I want to say is, first of all, my household is a Blazinski customer, and we have been since we bought our house in 2002. And when the discussion was first thrown out there about going to a single-use hauler because of environmental reasons and keeping fewer trucks on the streets, I was concerned about that because I thought, oh, what if the township hires somebody other than Blazinski? Because we were so happy with Blazinski and what a great job they were doing, and never had any problems. And since the buyout by Waste Connections, so much has changed. And I've received so many complaints about the garbage situation, and I've tried to get everybody to forward those on to the township. It's really important that the township can collect all of those opinions or complaints and bundle it where all the supervisors and all management can see it. My husband talked to somebody from Blazinski last week, and he said he was surprised he got somebody on the phone, but then he kept him on the phone for a long time, asking him what was going on and talking to him about the situation. And he got the impression that because Radnor is now using Blazinski exclusively, and because Malvern is, that the trucks that would normally service Tredyffrin are being diverted to service Radnor and Malvern on time so that they won't have any issues since they've just been hired township-wide there. And the person on the phone, and we got the letter as well, we got the postcard saying that starting today, pickup would begin to be only once a week, and that our pickup day would be Monday. So we put our garbage out, and I left my house at 6:40 to come here for the meeting, and my garbage and all my neighbors' garbage is still out there. So, I know they've been promising a lot of people will pick up on Monday the 17th, and there's so many promises that go unfulfilled. It's like the boy who cried wolf, and then nobody believes that something's going to really happen when they say it's going to happen. And Blazinski folks, you can't give me any favorable treatment. You can't just go look at my account and come service it because the account's under my husband's name. He's got a different last name than me. So our trash will get picked up when everybody else does, and that's fine. Make us the last one, but everybody else needs to get their trash picked up. So once this idea was being floated again for the township to potentially hire one provider, and the chief reason is not environmental reasons anymore, it's to make sure our trash gets picked up. My opinion on that is a little different. I don't know if they have the trucks here to be able to service Tredyffrin. I don't know if that's going to mean they're going to have to buy new trucks, because there's just not enough to service exclusively this many areas. So when Bhaskar said it's a race to the bottom, I thought, are we rushing to this to hurry and hire one person so that others' trucks get diverted to us? And that means, because I've seen, online, so many other areas are going without their trash picked up as well. And, people, depending on where they live, they've got raccoons going in through their trash. They're worried about the rats. There was a rat problem several years ago, maybe 8 or 9 years ago with the trash, and that was traced back to at least the businesses, the restaurants doing business in the Sweetsford Plaza area near where I live. And so there's no more rats, but everybody's worried it's coming back. The foxes jumping up in there to the trash because they smell old chicken bones or whatever. They're trying, I hate to say it, but that's the reality. I feel really sorry for people whose kids are still in diapers. They got to hold on to those diapers now for a whole week and then some. I just think so much of this is not being considered. So I'm with Mark. I really liked the system it used to be, where the township didn't get involved with people's personal contracts with their trash hauler, and there was this great competition, but it's not working anymore. So I am happy to see what maybe other collection providers come forth and say as well. and what bids they might give us. Maybe it'll open it up to others we hadn't heard from, but I don't know. So I'm all for the township going out for bids and see what we can get, and hear from Blazinski as well as any other providers. Thank you.
All right, any other board comments?
Just real quick, I've lived in multiple locations. This is the first township I've ever lived in, or place I've ever lived in, where it was private trash collection. Every other place was single hauler run by the town. And it's always been better than it's been here. 100% of the time it's been better run, better service, cheaper. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what we get from our RFP, and hopefully it'll be better service and lower cost.
All right, we will move on to public comments or questions.
Madam Chair, before we open that up, we do have some virtual members with their hands up.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are public here as well, so I figured we'll go
back and forth. Okay.
And before we start that, I did have one email which you did receive in your packet from Michael Heberg, resident of the township, mentioning if we do go out to bid, he prefers the option where the hauler will collect and bill. He listed a number of concerns if we took it in-house of additional costs and staffing. So you have that in your packet. And there was also an email from Margaret Bernarson. I believe she's here tonight as well in the audience. It was specifically referenced the 168, Chapter 5, the time of collection and time of putting your cans out, which will be the second item we'll be talking about tonight. So I want to make sure that you are aware of that as well. And with that, Madam Chair, your preference as to virtual or public and audience.
All right, why don't we have 3 hands raised, so why don't we start with someone virtual, and then we'll move to anyone here.
Dr. Levis, you're ready.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that Ms. Humble had her phone picked up by Brzezinski, because I've called several times and they never return the call and you never can get through. And we live in the eastern part of the township. We're almost in New Jersey. And we are constantly not picked up because they say, well, we couldn't get to your area and we'll just leave it out and we'll get it the next day. And this happens over and over again. I lived in Abington Township. The township, when I grew up, and the township there actually picked up the trash and did it themselves in-house. And it was fine. We didn't have these sorts of problems. We are prisoners of Blazinski because there's no one else that services this area. We're in Fox Chapel. No one else comes here. So I am just, poor Patricia Hoffman has heard from me so many times, and I'm sure she recognizes the number, because we constantly having these difficulties. And I just hope that this is passed and that we install it as quickly as possible, because I'm sick and tired of having to pull the cart in. I'm 80 years old. I have to pull the car out, but I have to pull the cart back in again. But I have to pull it out again because we don't like to leave it out, because you mentioned the trash problems with raccoons. Well, I don't know if there are raccoons here, but foxes. So anyway, please do it, and do it quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the public who's here today? If you do, you can come up to the mic and state your name and your address before giving your comment.
Susanna Hay, Colquitt Lane. I just first want to thank all the staff who's worked so hard on this, because it was a lot of work. It's a big document. If people have looked at it, it's very detailed and very comprehensive. And I think I very much appreciate that. With regards to the problems we've had lately, so with this new contract, or like the request for contracts, opens up a whole new world of trash haulers that we have not had the privilege to even hire as private citizens. So there will be companies that are much better equipped to service larger townships, and that we really haven't had the pleasure of using. So I think the problem lately with Blazinski is like really special, in the sense that all of a sudden they've been thrown into a large township at the same time that the company was sold to a new company, and so their service has gone down drastically. Blazinski is our caller, and so I think that will change. once we can look at individual larger haulers and make our points clear, because at the moment there's really nothing that holds them accountable to anything. And I do also think that the environmental impacts of a single hauler are very important, including, like the pressure on the roads, the exhaust, picking up leaves and composting leaves and yard waste, which we haven't done right now. Like for the years past, haulers really have picked up anything and everything that was on the curb. Every week they drove by. And so if we put rules into play, they will really greatly benefit the environment going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will move to another virtual question. Ms. Clark.
Hi there, this is Carol Clark. Thanks to the staff for doing all the legwork on this, and also thanks to the supervisors for giving their thoughtful comments regarding a single trash collector. It's interesting, and I don't know, some of my neighbors might be there in the audience, but I did want to speak up partially on their behalf, is that the residents on my street just negotiated a deal with a single company to be dealing for our trash on our street. And there were a number of issues that I want to make sure that if we end up having to switch over to the one for the township, just want to clarify a few things. Can individual residents opt out of the agreement? Some people want to pay separately to have someone with a small truck be able to go down long driveways to pick up things from behind their garages, et cetera, where they are down a long sort of private drive, and they're looking for haulers to handle that. Also, they had concerns about many individuals wanted to be able to request twice a week collection. And some consider themselves, they use the term trash hogs, which comically, but they said they needed to request extra bins. And so they were paying extra to have extra bins so that all of their trash could be collected appropriately. So there were some questions and issues that I think need to be considered in the contract. Also, we need some flexibility of when this contract would start. If it is agreed upon, because everyone has agreements with different people that they have paid in advance for, and some it's just a month, some it's quarterly, some it could be a longer term than that. So we need to be flexible to address their issues. On my personal opinion is that in theory, I think this should work and could be very beneficial. Two important points I think others have raised, but I really, really, truly do not want our own township staff wasting their precious time dealing with residential complaints and issues that we know will arise. And as much as we can direct everyone to send their questions, issues to the company and payment, et cetera, through the company that's dealing with this, I think that's the most appropriate thing. Also, has there been any discussion with townships that have extensive experience doing this with a single hauler so that we really understand all the pros and cons, and there's not some hidden problems that we have not thought of ourselves that we haven't addressed or raised? Thank you so much for taking my comments.
Thank you. And I do think part of the due diligence here by our staff was to talk to other townships. I don't know if you want to comment more, Mr. Draco.
Sure, I'm happy to. I think the first question was about opting out. The easy answer to that one is no, unless you're excluded, which we have excluded certain HOAs from this. You'll be required to go with the township's provider. In terms of increasing the frequency of pickups, again, that'll be outlined in the contract. The RFB has it written for once a week. We have left ourselves a little bit of room in terms of the size of the receptacles. So, I know that'll be I'm sure we'll get feedback from many residents on certain size. So we'll try to be flexible with that. To answer your question about doing research, so we really relied heavily upon Easttown and Euclid townships who have been doing this for quite some time. I personally live in Euclid, so I'm aware of some of the issues that they've had with single haulers. So that's why we really wanted to find out from them what are what are some of the issues they had and try to avoid that. And so we've taken that information, Carol, and tried to craft that into the RFP to allow ourselves not to deal with those issues.
All right, any other comments from the public here? All right, come on up to the mic.
I'll be a little longer-winded than probably most. I'm Mike Schmidt. I'm the CEO founder of Whitetail Disposal. Just to give a little quick background of Whitetail, we're local. As most of you guys well know, most of the local companies have gone out of business and/or have sold to much larger companies such as Republic Waste Management. New company in the area is Waste Connections. A little bit of background on Whitetail so you guys know where we started and where we're at now, and the reason we got to where we are today is I started the company when I'm 20. Right before I turned 21, I'm 37 now. So we've been in this 15 going on 16 years. We're celebrating our 15-year anniversary. Whitetail isn't perfect, like you guys have seen since the pandemic. Pre-pandemic and post-pandemic has been tough in the waste industry. It's very difficult. However, if you look in the waste industry, Whitetail has continued to grow, which is the only local company that has continued to grow, and there's a huge reason for that. I come into work every day. My brothers come into work every day. My father does. I have one of my best friends here. He's a VP of Operations. Paul Brady's couldn't be here tonight, but he's on Zoom. He will be speaking more to the financial aspects, the pros and cons to single hauler. But currently, Whitetail Disposal on a weekly basis services 150 to 160,000 residential customers. If you times that by 2, that's over 300,000 customers that we service weekly. And not many people know of Whitetail. They think we're a larger company than I am. We have a location in Conshohocken, Perkiomenville, and we just opened one up in Allentown. I visit every office each week. I'm involved in the day-to-day operations, sales, shop, everything. I don't hear everything every day, but by the end of the week, if there's an issue, we're there to address it. And with that, we got news that not just in Tredyffrin Township, but all over A.J. Blazinski's struggling. We've gotten calls from, if I say 10 townships, that's probably an understatement between me and my partner, Paul Brady. But a little bit about Whitetail. We have 370 employees. We have just over 250 trucks. And then we just signed up 6 municipal single hauler contracts, speaking to what Tredyffrin's thinking about going to tonight. We signed up one in November, which was, that one there was probably like 4,000. And we signed up Northampton Township and 4 others, okay? Single hauler township is not the ends all to be all. You have an example, we got a call last week, Spring City Borough, that we currently service the trash on. They're terminating the agreement on the single hauler recycling side because they can't get picked up. You have Upper Pottsgrove Township, that is my neighboring township where I used to live. They canceled single hauler contract because of service issues. Northampton Township, Southampton Township, and there's a whole list of other townships that have declared a state of emergency during COVID. And the difference is from Whitetail is we're local. Mascara is also local. They're more regional now, but I still go to the same church, same grocery stores, same convenience stores as everybody here. I'm out in the public. I hear and see things that a lot of other people don't. So we address issues a lot quicker than other people. We have the system in our office that, and if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me, Kyle, we monitor everything that comes into our office. We had a 99.6% success rate of picking up 150, 160,000 customers last week. 0.04% that called in are issue customers. So less than 0.5%, and that could be, we don't argue with customers if they put it out or don't put it out. And this is going from the script side as well as the single hauler side. We just, half of that, 0.04%, they probably didn't put it out. We go pick it up. The other little bit is probably our issue. We have no problems. We go out and we pick it up. There is no other hauler in the waste industry that has that success rate of picking up trash, contract or no contract. And going back to moving into single hauler, you have Northampton Township that can't get the trash picked up. White Marsh down here, they canceled yard waste for a year and a half. They couldn't pick it up. They canceled recycling for a month and a half. Whitetail Disposal has never ever in the single hauler market and or individual sign up script service has never left anybody sit week over week and canceled. Okay, now we may have been a day late on the script side, but we always communicated with customers and we always picked them up. And if we did not do what we said, we would always try and refund them and work with the customers. That's our job of being local. Going back last August, I think Republic pulled out. Part of the reason they pulled out is they said, we're going to focus on, and they pulled out of, we had the issue from Tredyffrin Township, Upper Marion, all the way up all Bucks County. Republic pulled out of all of Bucks County and this area. Well, who did the township managers call? They didn't have single hauler in place. They had nobody in place but Whitetail Disposal. So I know a couple people, and I think Bill Martin maybe called my partner, Paul Brady, or someone from this township, said, hey, we got an issue. Someone emailed my partner and said, we got an issue. Can you guys come down? We came down here, Doylestown Borough, Horsham Township. We went everywhere, and that's part of us being local. We're here to help everybody. We're here to keep the prices down, and when there is an issue, there is no other local hauler that's going to help you out. And going single hauler, and like I said, I could mention 10, 15 others just within a half hour here that had problems with service. And it doesn't matter if they're not picking you up, they're not picking you up. If you're script or if you're under contract, they're not picking you up. Spring City is a great example of it. Now, Spring City is not going to go after their bid bond because there's a whole legal process to that. They're just ending their contract and they're putting it out. They're putting it out for bid again. Okay, Northampton Township, they had a state of emergency. We currently service them now. Southampton, White Marsh. Ask them about their issues. So going single hauler is not necessarily, the way to go. I'm not saying it's not. There's pros and cons to both sides, and my partner will be able to speak more upon that. But we are the local hauler. No matter what happens, we're going to be here. Listen, Waste Connections is a great company. They're not third biggest in the country because they don't know what they're doing. They will get this fixed. They will figure it out. They're having a tough time in this market. But while they're struggling, Whitetail's here to help your residents, to sign up your residents, and we are the cheapest hauler in the Philadelphia market over any length of time.
All right, I'm just going to ask
That's fine.
to wrap it up.
Yeah,
because you're welcome to put in a bid, of course, if we...
Yeah, that's fine. So just to my partner, we'll speak a little bit to that from what I'm referring to. If anyone else has any questions, I'll be here afterwards. If the board or residents have any questions, they can let me know. But we're here to help in any which way possible. So thank you.
Great, thank you. We will move to one of the online hands.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, yep, go ahead.
Okay, great. I wanted to ask if the document that has been referenced is available publicly for residents to view.
I believe it was attached to the agenda, and it's online.
Okay. I did look at the link of the agenda and I didn't see it, but I will take another look and reach out to my supervisor if needed. And my second question, and if it's covered in the document, please let me know. We've heard both sides. There's pros and cons to single hauler, to go with single hauler or not. What does going through this RFP, I'm familiar with an RFP process, but what are the next steps here? So the township will go through the RFP, and how is it decided if we will move to a single hauler system or not?
So at our September 18th board meeting, Staff will have at that point reviewed all of the bids, and then our job will be to determine who is the lowest responsible bidder. And then we would make a recommendation to the board based off of those results.
Okay, so would that be brought back to a future meeting before the board votes, or what does that look like?
It'll be discussed at the September 18th board meeting. And at that point, the board can decide to select one of the two options that we have, or they can reject all of the bids and keep the system the way it is now.
Okay, so there won't be an opportunity for the residents to learn about the RFP process prior to the decision being made?
So that's what we're doing right now. We're discussing, the board's discussing and taking comments on the RFP and the overall process.
Yes, I understand that, but the RFP is a learning process, so I imagine that there will be a lot of education that will come out of it. So I'm just curious if we will get insight into that before the vote is made.
So internally, we've discussed how we would potentially roll this out for a 1/1 start. And essentially, we've given ourselves from the September 18th board meeting, 100 days to really get the education out. And so our plan is to, we'll do a mass mailer out to all the residents that are going to be affected, to make sure that they know what's going on and they understand. And then, we'll really be using social media as well as our website to inform the public about everything that's going to be involved in making a potential transition.
Okay, so just to make sure that I'm clear, you'll go through the RFP process. The decision will be to move to single hauler or not, and if so, who the single hauler is. The residents of the township will not have any insight until that decision is already made, and we will be forced to move into whatever system is decided.
So after tonight, we'll distribute the RFP to as many haulers as we really know. After that, the process is outlined in our RFP. At the September meeting, we'll discuss it with the board, and that's when you'll also have an opportunity to ask more questions and about the hauler and our plan moving forward.
Madam Chair, the thing I'm struggling with trying to understand the comments is I hear questions being asked about the process. I hear Mr. DeRocco responding to the questions and explaining the timeline and explaining that we have tonight where there's public comment being taken. We're going to have September where there's public comment being taken. We'll have an August meeting where obviously there's always some opportunity for public comment. And then after going through all that, I feel like we're all on the same page, and then the commenter keeps ending with, and then the public doesn't have a chance to comment. And I think we've laid out a number of options, including tonight, August, September, and maybe even after that for the public to comment.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, Mark. I was not aware that the September meeting was open to the public. So I appreciate that clarity, and we'll be sure to stay connected.
Yeah, just to add something, since you haven't been to many meetings, I would expect in September there'll be a presentation by staff which would explain the process we went through, the various bids we received, why they're recommending whichever direction they're recommending. And then just like tonight, we would expect there will be some comment from the public. And then we would take a vote after hearing, considering all that, both the staff comment, the public comment, and our own views, if that makes sense.
That's very helpful. That was all the questions that I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, come on up.
My name is Margaret Van Arsen. I live at 460 Prussian. And thank you for just as you opened up for the public comment, it was my message to the Board of Supervisors was mentioned, and I do want to explain that because this is a moment in which a change can happen. I've been long concerned about the pickup time. There's an ordinance 168 in the code, and the ordinance has a very unreasonable time constraints on residents putting out trash. And I have mentioned this in previous meetings, and I think that if we're going to be switching to making other arrangements, we also need to deal with that ordinance. And I would highly recommend that the Board of Supervisors re-examine that ordinance and seriously consider changing that, or doing something else other than the time constraints that are very strictly put in there that are very unreasonable in terms of the timing that when we can put trash out and when we can't. And so that should be considered, I think, when you're setting out the features or the parts of the bid, I think, perhaps. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will say that is the next on our agenda tonight that will be, if we'll be voting on that next, to have our solicitor update that chapter, and that would be the time to do it. I know you've come many times before, and this is the chance that we'll be opening up the chapter.
I apologize, I didn't have time to open up the agenda before.
No, I'm saying it's good news. It's actually on our agenda
related,
to do it, so. All right. Mr. Brady, try to keep this pretty short because we have already heard from Whitetail, but go ahead and add your comments.
Yes, good evening. This is Paul Brady. I work with Mike, and I'm the president of the company. I will make this quick. I'm going to point out a couple things, and I'm going to use the one as an example. There's been a conversation about hauler billing directly to the customer, for example. Of the 6 municipalities we signed up last year, not one of them requires us to bill directly the customer. That raises our costs directly. And please understand, we pass those costs right on through to you. That is just an example. As you get into an RFP, and I'm sure this RFP is very detailed, but the more things you require and the more things you look for, the more it costs. Now, right now at Whitetail, our average cost per customer is basically $99, and the highest we charge any one individual customer is $109. And currently, right now, we've had a change in the market where costs have gone up, and actually, most of the last 20 years, direct single haul or direct customer service was more expensive than single hauler. You got, for example, the benefits of having 4,000 or 5,000, whatever the size of the township may be. That's gone right now. And the simple reason is I have to, if you put out, for example, this RFP for a 3-year bid, I have to take in consideration, are we going back to $6 a gallon, $7 a gallon of diesel? And I have to take those potential risk and put them in today's prices. So please don't expect lower prices than what you're incurring, at least at Whitetail. I won't speak for our competition, but at least at this point in time. Some of these things being said are just not going to happen. Electric trucks are not going to happen. What they'll do is they'll cut the size of the electric truck, which will raise the cost because instead of having one diesel truck or one CNG truck, you'll have 2 electric trucks and they'll be expensive. So the cost of capital, it is a capital-intensive business. I heard Mr. Freed. I agree with them. And these are some of the things that I'm not sure you took into consideration. Single hauler is not a silver bullet. Last, I'll leave this with is the quality of service. If anything the pandemic did, if I could give a quick idea, it's like the SAT test for all the high school students. Doesn't matter what high school you went to. The SAT test is the same for everyone. And that was the same for the pandemic. And I assure you, single hauler, the quality of service, just because you have a contract and just because it's single hauler doesn't mean the quality of service is going to meet, as I think one of the board members said, the expectations that you have on paper. So with that, as Mike said, we are active in the single hauler. It's not necessarily a bad idea. I think the timing is a little off for you right now because costs are higher now. If you did this 4 or 5 years ago, single hauler was a lot less expensive than direct residential. And these are some of the things that I hope get out there that all the residents hear and understand because they have had a challenge with one of our competitors. Trash can be very emotional, and I'm sure there's some upset people. The decision, for example, go from 2 to 1, that's environmentally correct. That was the correct decision by A.J. Blazinski. Trash is inelastic. I could pick you up 5 days a week, and you're not going to produce any more trash. So the number of service, unless you have diapers, I think someone said, other than that, and I have 6 children, the only time I ever needed twice a week service was, concerning diapers. And then again, the last thing, you treat seniors as if they're a family of 4 young. And seniors produce 1 bag of trash, and they're paying that cost, and they have no choice in the matter. And families of 4, families of 5 maybe get a little bit more service. So again, there's a lot of pros and cons to single hauler. And I hope you had a thorough conversation. We weren't included in that conversation, I might add. We pick up approaching 2,500 of your neighbors and residents there in Tredyffrin. And now we have a challenge, because if you vote to go single hauler, and we just expanded our relationship down there when that national company pulled out less than a year ago, it basically ensures that I lose money. Whitetail loses money. And, that's a challenge for us. I'm not in business to lose money. So what do? I can't pick up 5,000 pieces of equipment in the first week of January, just so you know. And I want to make that understood. I'm not sure you've gotten a good conversation or input from the haulers, at least whitetail, and what we're doing in there right now. And that's why we wanted to come out and introduce ourselves. And I apologize for taking the amount of time and your valuable time that we have tonight. But those are some things that you need to think about. Maybe, when something traumatic or dramatic happens, you pause a little bit. I think Mr. Freed said it best. You want to make sure you're not jumping out of pan and fire. And with that, I'll leave that. If anyone needs me, feel free to reach out and call me at the office tomorrow. Mike's there today, and I appreciate your valuable time. And if I can answer any QA right now, I'd be more than happy to.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other public comments or questions? Come up to the mic.
Liz Headley, 1500 Nob Hill Lane, Paoli. First of all, thank you to the supervisors for putting this on the agenda and your comments, and to staff and the public for coming. I'm a Blazinski customer and never had a problem until they were acquired. And then they had, I think, delayed our trash 3 times, our recycling once. I called. They sent a message. So I think it's important, if you do go to a single hauler, that you have some way to communicate township-wise of problems, snow dates, or whatever. That, I think, is very important. I also think it's very important that you have more public input. I'd like to see a survey. I don't know how hard that would be to put together. And I mean, we're now empty nesters. Our Conestoga graduates are in Boston and Virginia, and I've lived in 7 other states. I've seen a lot of different hauling models. My favorite was Carlisle, Massachusetts. It's a rural suburban town outside of Boston. They didn't come and pick up trash at your house. You brought it to a central location. You sorted it. Styrofoam glass. I know this is crazy, but it worked well. But my favorite thing is they had this thing called the swap shack, where you put like your Goodwill stuff, and people have, furnished their houses out of it. But I thought that was a very neat model. But I just think you need more public input, and you need a better communication system if you're going to have a single hauler, to know when things are going to happen or not happen. And whitetail is in my neighborhood, but we've just stuck with Blazinski, because if it's not broken, don't fix it. So the other thing I'd be curious about is how long your contract is for. Is it a single year? Is it a 3-year contract?
It's a 5-year contract.
A 5-year contract, okay. So anyway, we usually only have 1 bag a week, but last week my husband was out of town. I cleaned out some closets and some other things, and I had a full can. But, I just look forward to just having more public input. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, just a clarification, Mr. DiRocco. I believe it's a 5-year contract, but it gives the township the ability to get out at the end of 3 years and 4 years. So effectively, it's either 3 extensible to 5 or 5 that can be cut short to 3.
All right, come on up.
Forgive me, I'm a little slow.
I think we've already heard from the police department and the school board tonight.
I thought I was retired from these things, but I have a wife, so the wife said, go. One comment, well, I try, as a preacher, you never say one comment, but the one thing I would say is, as you look at these things, 3 things that pop up in my mind. I'm simplistic. I just want my trash picked up. I want it picked up on time, and I don't want any complications. Simplicity. And when I say that is, if it's not, I'm concerned because the customer service has been awful. And so I think when you look at moving forward, however we do this, and I thank the staff, I thank the Board of Supervisors for putting this together and trying to react as quickly as possible. But the thing I worry about is if we do have one single trash person or group, however we do it, my concern is, one, how is their customer service going to be any better? Because if it isn't, then who's going to pick up that customer service backlash? Is it going to be our staff? Or is it going to be the company? And so I think customer service is huge. The other thing I think when we look at this is, along with customer service, we also want to look at what that cost will be. Is it going to be a higher cost for taxes? Taxes continue to grow each and every day, and what is that cost now? I'm going to be getting more tax for trash. What's that going to be like? I'm not saying that I can't afford it, but again, we got to keep, my babies are growing. They're old. They now pay for me to go to Phillies games, so I'm good. But the reality of it is, everybody has a budget, and how's that going to affect our family budget? So cost, customer service, those things are big to me, along with simplicity. Do what you got to do and get it done. And the other thing is this system going to help people because it seems to me one of the biggest problems is staffing. We had it on our side when we were trying to do busing. Finding people to drive, finding people to work in this industry seems to be complex right now. And is this going to be better? And so I would like to see whatever you do or whoever you bring in, whether there's staffing strategies so that we don't run into this problem 2-3 years down the contract. So just keep those things in mind. Again, thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. Any other public comments? All right.
Just one thing about the RFQ. There were a list of HOAs that were excluded from the bid. And as Carol said, our little neighborhood has been looking at going to one hauler, and obviously we're not on the list. And I'm just wondering what's the thinking behind excluding those that are excluded, and could other HOAs add into that?
So we tried to, we looked at what some of the other municipalities were doing, and essentially we landed on, I think it's like 4 units or more we would exclude. So again, it's really, the easiest way to explain it, Ray, is like Chesterbrook, very dense, very small, tight, narrow streets. Again, doesn't necessarily go with the goal of trying to reduce the number of trucks and traffic that we had as part of this. So, we looked at that, a lot of, just multifamily HOAs, not your single families are included within the bed.
I had a comment. The past 2 people have come up to speak. You haven't stated your name. While we know who you are, everybody else doesn't. So I'm just asking people to state their name when they come forward. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Tracy Viola. I'm from 238 Rosedale Avenue in Wayne. Just want to thank you all for your consideration for this single hauler. I'm a fan. I want to thank the staff for, I mean, the RFP is amazing. I actually did read it. It's really long, and it's beautiful, in my personal opinion. So I want to touch on a couple things that people mentioned. I don't want to hold up too much more time here, but Mr. Brady, that just shared on Zoom, mentioned, that the single hauler is not going to be a silver bullet. Of course it's not. I mean, I don't really know many things that are, but I also don't know any townships, any local townships that don't have a single hauler. And maybe Mr. Draco can speak more to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Tredyffrin is the odd man out in this. So I think we can learn from all of the other townships that are already doing this. I'm sure they have a lot of advice and feedback to give us, but I feel like we're kind of maybe the, behind the ball here potentially. Number two, I am very excited about the environmental impacts. And, if we currently have, I think we have 3 haulers now that service Tredyffrin. We used to have 4. 2 haulers now? Are we down to 2? Okay. All right. So we used to have 4, then we went to 3, now we're at 2. All right. So that's better. But that does mean the emissions drop. What that also means is that there's less wear and tear on our roads that we're not having to repair from these huge trucks driving up and down our roads. That also means, to the last 2 speakers that came up, whose names I apologize, I heard the words consistency and I heard the words simplicity. What that would mean is that we all have the same rules. My street knows me as the trash lady. I'm fine with that. I like Oscar, I love trash, and I should say more, I hate trash. I want to minimize it as much as possible, but they always ask me, is this recyclable, Tracy? Is this recyclable? What about this? And I say, I don't know who your hauler is, so I don't know what your rules are. So we have the consistency and simplicity of the same rules, the same information, the same pickup dates, the same change in schedule. So I, for one, love that. And lastly, something that hasn't been mentioned yet is the safety. I live on a glorious little street that is one of those streets that you have to kind of pull over out of the way when the other car's coming. It's like a 1.5 lane street, and there are over 25 young children on our little street. And these haulers scare the crap out of me. So if we have less haulers and we have a scheduled day when we know those haulers are coming, I don't know when Whitetail's coming. I don't know when Republic was coming. I don't know when whoever the heck else was coming. I don't know what their scheduled pickups are. But if we know that every day or this day of the week these haulers are coming, I can just be a little bit more cognizant of the kids on our street and the safety of them. Pets. So if you have children, if you have grandchildren, if you have pets, less haulers, less danger. So I just want to thank you for your consideration, and thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. Any other comments? You can come on up.
Good evening, Martin Capurro, 107 Darby, and thank you all for the opportunity. So I had no fixed comments on this. I just was reacting. Actually, I didn't even know we were going through this process. But a couple things in terms of just a comment. I do think it's important to have reasonable flexibility in terms of pickup. I'm hoping that, it's not really a question, more of a comment. I'm hoping that there's flexibility to add more than one bin, not just a small bin, but two big bins. I think that's just a common request, and I just want to make sure that people have flexibility. I don't have a strong opinion one way or another. But I will comment, since I did hear Whitetail come up, we had Republic, and we had a great experience with Republic. We're disappointed that they stopped serving the area. And I did pick Whitetail. And I think, just wanted to say, our experience has been awesome. They've been consistent. The price is incredible. The order process is almost too good to be true. I was just wondering if it was really going to happen, and it did. It's a nice touch. We live in a community. Our kids were out with a lemonade stand last week, and these guys came by. They bought lemonade, right? So I just feel like they've done a great job. They're a local company. I hope they get the proper consideration. That's all.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, then we will move to the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. And our next motion is related. It's a motion to authorize staff to work with solicitor to update Chapter 168 of the Tredyffrin Township Code. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just authorization, so that way we can work with the Solicitor's Office to prepare changes to the ordinance that will allow us to move potentially to single hauler. Happy to answer any questions.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. Any board comment?
Yes, as we're considering this changes as Township Manager Martin had stated, I hope we are also going to consider Mrs. Van Nerson's suggestions for change as well regarding times to place trash cans out and to bring them in. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. This is the time to do that. Any other board comments? Any public comments? All right, hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to accept recommendation of the Finance Committee to update millage in 2024 for stormwater management. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an item that's been it's been discussed with the board for the last couple of months, really stemming from the Westchester Borough case in terms of the stormwater management fee. Our solicitor's office, prepared a memo for the board which outlined, we're really talking about what the legal risks are for the township as we move towards implementing and finding a revenue source for our stormwater program. And so with that, we've been discussing it in finance quite a bit. And the Finance Committee is recommending that the township, as part of the 2024 budget process, would issue a specific millage rate for stormwater revenue. And so, just to clarify what that means is that on our real estate tax bills, there'll be a very defined millage rate that will go, not to the general fund, but will go to the stormwater revenue fund. And so that's how we'll fund the program. It doesn't mean that the township will always have to have a millage rate for this. If, at a time where the Westchester case is fully adjudicated, the township could potentially switch later on to the fee system, which is, what we've been working on with the advisory group since its inception. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Obviously, the solicitor can answer any of the legal questions about this. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I can, just a quick comment, or not, I don't know how quick it's going to be, but I think it's worth giving a little bit of background, if that's okay. Just, I think what's important, just because if you look at this on paper, it's not exactly clear what we're talking about. The question that we're dealing with tonight is not how much should a stormwater fee or tax be, or it's really about the form. I think if people will remember a few years back, there was a lot of almost unanimous requests for the township to do something on stormwater, to start taking some action, to figure out ways of addressing stormwater infrastructure. And after that, even at that time, we were working on it, and we started working on the concept of looking at and potentially doing a stormwater fee of some sort, doing some sort of stormwater program. We were pretty far along. We had engaged a consultant. We were working with a consultant trying to figure out the best way to do it. And then, as Mr. Duraco mentioned, there was this case that came out of Chester County, out of Westchester University, essentially saying, at least in that, and there's a lot of legal nuance that we don't have to get into, but at least in that situation, that although the borough was calling it a fee, and when you call something a fee like they did in Radnor for many years, you can capture both the tax exempt and the taxed entities and sort of spread it out broader. What the Commonwealth Court, at least, which is a mid-level appellate court, said is, no, this is really, no matter what you call it, it's really a tax. We're going to treat it as a tax. Tax-exempt entities are exempt. So then we were then left, well, what does this do? What does this do to all the planning we've been doing? What does this do to the process? And ultimately, after kicking it around, we said, well, we do need to do, obviously the rain's not stopping, stormwater's coming, stormwater's still an issue. We need to move forward with something. And so we said, well, at least for now, as a first step, let's move forward. And the question then, this is the question that we were really dealing with tonight, do we take our chances and try and do a fee and say townships are different than boroughs, authorities are different than boroughs, we could create, and risk essentially a lawsuit? Or do we say, you know what, we'll follow at least until, if and when the court decision changes, if and when the General Assembly passes a law that allows a stormwater fee to come into play, do we go with a more traditional tax structure? It's not talking about more or less money, different projects. It's really just about what structure is going to be used in order to come up with a program. And so that's what we're talking about tonight, is essentially recognizing, if assuming the board wants to approve it, that we're going to at least start with the idea of doing a more traditional tax millage program, because the courts have said pretty clearly that that's okay. I think that the case that came out of Westchester is up on appeal to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. So we don't know what the Supreme Court's going to do. Like I said, the General Assembly could do something too to say fees are okay, but unless until that happens, I think the safer course, and at least that's what's before the board tonight, the safer course on stormwater is, do we move forward and sort of just follow what it appears the court's directing us to do and go in the way of a millage as opposed to a fee structure. So I think it's less about, how much it's going to be, what it's going to be, and more about what is the correct legal structure to try and address stormwater. Is that?
Yeah, thank you for giving more background on that.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
I was going to
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to make it, for any people who aren't lawyers and follow parts of that. I mean, the way the Finance Committee looked at this was, we're going to collect X dollars. There's a fixed amount we know we want to collect for stormwater projects, and we don't want any of it to get diverted to legal battles because of the form of the collection at this point in time. So this is a form that we know isn't going to be challenged, and that's why we made the decision for now, as Mark emphasized a couple times, to collect this on a millage basis, and then once the Westchester Borough case is settled, we would then switch to an impervious surface basis if that is in fact something we can do. That's how we look at it. Just, we don't want to spend money on lawyers that we don't have to.
Yeah, and I guess two other points that I'll add. One, in the millage, it would be its own, you would see it as a stormwater millage, so it would be a fully separate line. And two, now I have to remember what my second point was going to be. We have gone.
Should we have Dr. Gussie? Should we have a motion? Or
we're going to do it. I realized that we kind of went out of order, but that's okay.
That was my fault. So.
Yeah, we're doing it out of order. The other point I'd like to make is, we have gone through this process with our advisory committee for stormwater to develop a fee. And so we have all the work put in already for the fee. So whenever, if and when this is overturned, we will be ready to flip that switch and move to impervious calculations. I will, okay, I can see
Dr.
everyone wants
Gussie,
to take their turn, and then we will do the motion.
Yeah, well, yes, Dr. Gussie, I just like to, for me, it's really simple at this point. We have that case floating around out there that would put any other means other than this means of putting it in millage as a real estate tax, and would put that at risk and put the money at risk. And what we do need today, in order to do this today, is are the funds to undertake some of these projects and maybe pay the debt service on some of the bonds that we're going to have to issue to undertake these stormwater projects, so we don't have houses floating around and people put in danger. So for me, this is very, very simple, and we'll get into the dollars and cents at a later time. So, that's how I feel.
All right, let's go ahead and take a motion. Do we have a motion?
I guess I should make the motion since everyone else pretty much has commented.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any other board comments? All right, do we have any public comments or questions? Come on up, Mr. Clark.
Okay, that's better. So thanks for the clear explanation. An important thing for people to take away is that the millage base, there's two significant things. One, the type of people or the type of taxpayers that pay is slightly different, because the tax-exempt properties will not be paying under a fee they would. And the basis on which people are charged is not impervious surface, it's assessed value. And I think that it's important that people recognize your ultimate intent, I think, as the advisory group would recommend, is that as the legal situation clarifies, you move to an impervious surface-based fee. But I think it's a very wise choice to avoid spending money on lawyers with our stormwater money for now. So
no one wants to pay lawyers.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right, thank you. Any other public comments? Oh, we have one online, and then we will move.
Hi, Carol Clark, checking in again. For point of clarification, will the MS4 needs be taken from that fund as well? And the waters, so to speak, pun intended, is continuing to be muddied between projects that we're working on and the MS4 needs? They overlap, I understand, and the like, but will MS4 funding needs be taken out of those funds that this millage would generate?
I believe so.
The fund itself is already up and running in the 23 budget, so that'll handle both flood reduction and our MS4 program as well.
Thank you.
Is it worth just taking 30 seconds to explain that to the public? MS4 is part of a state and ultimately federally mandated permit program that the township is required to implement through state and federal requirements, whereas I think some of the other stormwater type of work that Ms. Clark was referring to is less. It's not part of a mandated permit, but it's work that needs to be done to just mitigate flooding.
Yeah, that's correct. Again, MS4 is unfunded mandate, which is part of the reason why we're here, looking at a source of revenue for that. And again, you've heard Mr. Berger talk about it quite a bit as well as myself. MS4 is water quality, not quantity. But when Steve does projects, he tries to nail projects that do, reduce flooding and improve quality.
Jacqueline Cunin, Richards Road, Wayne. I'm making a comment of despair because we have been residents for over 30 years, and we have watched the development in this township explode with impervious surfaces, no green roofs, no grass blocks for driveways, no legislation that would really help the stormwater mess. And now you are asking us to pay for your negligence. Not this board. There have been many boards who have clear-cut 15 acres of forest to develop a housing unit. We are looking at development on Lifetime on Swedesford Road. We are looking at a huge apartment complex on the other side of Swedesford Road and the other side of 202. And now, we know you have to get the money somewhere. And we have begged, we have pleaded, we have demonstrated by your own ordinances that you have not lived up to enforcing those ordinances in order to promote development. And now we, the citizens, are going to pay. You may have a backlash on this. I think that you need to think of some other source of revenue, because the township residents who are dealing with the flooding, who are replacing furniture, who are redoing furnaces and driveways, have their own expenses due to this township's neglect of stormwater ordinances not being enforced. And I am looking at the engineer because we have been so closely related to this. Richards Road, when we moved in, had a little bit of flooding at Glen Hardy. Then it grew to 2 feet in a storm, like the one on the 9th. And now we have 4 feet, which has inundated 3 houses permanently for the since 2015. Now, you are asking the residents to approve this. And I don't think, except for Mr. Freed's explanation, nobody knows that a very expensive study, over $250,000, was authorized by this township to investigate the impervious surface of every resident and prorate. This was a thought that was floating about, to prorate that impervious surface formula for each resident, which would be different for each resident. That died sometime last year. But the information that you have is basically what's being used to calculate what is needed monetarily to help the stormwater situation. Now, I don't know how many of the residents know that this has been discussed by the board, by the township, paid a company to do a study. What I am saying is I must represent tons of people who have dealt with the stormwater problem. I am disappointed that you are asking the township residents to foot this bill.
Appreciate your comments. I'll just point out that that study is going on. That's the advisory group. We've had meetings every month, and they've come and presented to the public once, and I think next month is going to be the final presentation. So they'll go through all of the results, all the impervious calculations that you're referring to.
That doesn't matter, sweetheart. What matters is that the millage is on us. And the residents, in effect, are paying a tax for negligence, prior negligence, to be sure, but negligence of this township. And that's the comment I'm making. Not whether the information and the studies and the negotiations are ongoing. What I hear tonight is that it's on us. And it's been on us as homeowners. And I am angry. And I think other residents are going to be angry as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Mr. Coonan?
Yes, Richard Coonan, Chair, Trout Creek Watershed Residents Association. It isn't only for marital reasons, but I do agree with Mrs. Coonan. There are a variety of other reasons as well. I am not interested in the idea of a millage rate because that distributes the cost of this project evenly over the community. Now, people are going to say, what are you talking about? It's a democratic society. We do things evenly, which makes it fair. Well, you know, that's hard to argue with, except in the case of stormwater and impervious surfaces and cutting down trees. Some people are more responsible for the problem of flooding at Richards and Glen Hardy roads than other people are. I plant trees. I will not cut down a tree. I've often said to my wife, if we see a tree growing off in the bushes somewhere, she says, we have to do something about that tree. She says, move it. It doesn't mean cut it down. I said, you know, if a tree wants to live in my yard, it's welcome. Okay? It's perfectly welcome. Trees absorb water, groundwater. They're a very valuable commodity in the stormwater business, management business. Driveways, patios, walkways around swimming pools are not good for stormwater management. I really do support Mr. Clark and anyone else who says make a fee based on impervious surface, because those people who make impervious surfaces are responsible for water not infiltrating into the ground where it belongs, but ending up at the end of Richards Road and Glen Hardy Road, flooding people's living rooms up to the 2 feet above the floor. And of course, the living room is raised 2 feet above the ground level. We've seen it. We live very close to that area. We see it. You have got to make the people responsible for a problem pay for the problem. No more question, no more discussion. The answer is simple, and it's solved. Make the people who are responsible pay for the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will reiterate that I think our whole board agrees that it would be ideal to do impervious surface, and that is the goal, to switch to that when the legal risk goes away.
Oh, legal risk. Yes, you did talk about legal risk. I'd really like to know more about that. And is there a way I can find out more about that?
Yeah, the case is Westchester University versus Borough of Westchester. I think it's public domain.
Yeah, but that's the reason we're here. This is simply about the legal risk. So we are committed to switching to the impervious, which we have been working on diligently, and we'll be ready to switch with that to that.
I understand that. I understand the point, and it's an important one.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. But we do need, and I do support. I'm repeating on purpose. Make the people who are responsible pay, and let's see about solving the legal risk. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, and I don't see any online. So we will move to the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we move to a motion to authorize staff to advertise a public hearing on August 28, 2023 to consider and possibly adopt Ordinance HR 468, approving the Verizon Cable Franchise Agreement. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you, Dr. Gussie. The Township's charter requires that whenever there's a franchise agreement of this nature, that it must be done via an ordinance. So the ordinance that's in front of you is somewhat pro forma. It's really the agreement that's attached to the ordinance that's the substance of what the board it would more or less be approving. We've been working with Verizon on this new agreement for an unnecessarily long time, to be perfectly honest. Their council went dark for months, switched council, and it just took a very long time to get done. What stands before you this evening for the ordinance with the agreement attached to it represents a bit of a shift in the cable market. Cable is not near as popular as it was 15 years ago, and I think you're seeing that reflected in the draft agreement that is attached to the ordinance. So whereas the last agreement was for a period of 10 years with a 5-year renewal, this is a 5-year agreement with a renewal provision, which was a non-starter for Verizon. They would not budge off of that. And I think that's an acknowledgement of the streaming that we're all doing and all our children are doing nonstop, and we're moving away from the cable model. And I think Verizon is not a super huge player in that market to begin with, and they're looking at some flexibility to get out if they need to. There are other changes that I'm happy to discuss. It is very similar to the last agreement. We were able to expand some of the categories of the revenue, so hopefully you will see some additional revenue. I can't say it will be material. We are hamstrung in what we can do by the Telecommunications Act. You are only permitted to have a maximum of 5% of the gross revenue. Your revenue does not include the streaming. It does not include the internet. It's the Cable Act, so you're specifically excluded from those types of revenues. There's nothing that we can do about that. You can't get the free cable like we used to. The courts have now held that it has to be an in-kind contribution. Otherwise, it's essentially income to the township that you're not otherwise entitled to. It's a little silly in my opinion, but they've been very consistent with that. So what we're looking for would be authorization to advertise the ordinance, which would then approve the agreement at your meeting in August.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. Any board comments?
The only question I have for Mr. McKenna is when he couldn't get a hold of Verizon, did he ask them, can you hear me now?
No.
I'm not going to answer that.
Any other board comments? Any public comments? I know, let's just turn that off. Any public comment or questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to authorize staff to advertise a public hearing on August 28th, 2023 to consider and possibly adopt Ordinance H.R. 469, amending Chapter 16312 of the Code of Tredyffrin Township, and to adopt Upper Marion Township's new local limits for the industrial pretreatment program. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you, Dr. Gussie. This specific section of the township's charter relates to the Trout Run Panhandle drainage area of the township. You have a portion of the township that drains to and is treated by a treatment facility in Upper Marion Township. Your current ordinance adopts the pretreatment industrial program requirements of Upper Marion, and from time to time they institute and adopt resolutions that update those requirements. So essentially what we're sending to them has to be treated to a certain level. It has certain rules and regulations that we have to comply with since we're sending it to their system. That's what this ordinance is. It would adopt the most recent ordinance and resolution regarding those industrial pretreatment levels they were required to comply with.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comment?
Yes, I have a question for staff, so which is that we really don't have a choice as to whether we adopt these requirements, but are they going to affect us in any way in terms of equipment that we need to buy or in terms of services we provide or things like that?
No, it's just essentially requiring us that if we have an issue with realistically it would be like a commercial property, that we then have what we need to go after them to make sure that they're meeting the requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Dorr.
Any other board comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to authorize staff to advertise a public hearing on August 28, 2023 to consider and possibly adopt Ordinance H.R. 470, amending the Code of Tredyffrin Township, establishing Chapter 203, Woodland Conservation. Ms. McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman Gussie, members of the board. Yeah, we've been working on this woodland ordinance for a long time now. We have had reviews by both our Planning Commission and the Chester County Planning Commission, and at this point, we are ready for the public hearing on the ordinance. So I am asking the board to authorize the public hearing.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll just say that this has been a lot of work, and I want to thank the many people who have contributed to the draft, especially Ann Murphy and Tori Snyder and Aaron McPherson and Solicitor McKenna and many others. I'm keen to move forward with a woodland conservation ordinance, and I'm excited to see it get to this point where we can start further public process for feedback. Do we have any other board comments?
Yes, Dr. Gussie. So I would like to say that, I think this ordinance is long overdue. It's been a long time coming, but I think that with the effort that has gone into it, it's now, I think, a solid ordinance, and I think that some of the delays actually involved things like, working with council to make sure that it was less likely to get challenged. I think that, trees are excellent in terms of, indispensable in terms of managing stormwater. And certainly in the time that I have lived here, stormwater problems in this township have become more challenging. And the problem has been exacerbated by the extremes of climate that we have. When I first moved here 25 years ago, we didn't have several inches of rain in an hour. We do now. And there's only so much you can do with regard to building retention basins and ponds and so on. And trees are a wonderful way to prevent that water from getting into the ground, because the canopy of a tree can retain the water, and much of that will then evaporate from the tree without ever making it to the ground. And then the roots will absorb the water. So there's a whole process that goes on. So trees are good. And I think that we haven't respected our trees enough. I think that putting these canopies in place and preserving the canopies that we have are excellent. And I think that this is a good ordinance in the sense that, yes, I've actually read every bit of it, and I think that, we preserve the right to cut down dangerous trees, invasive trees. Those are things that, nobody's going to be happy with a tree, no matter how beautiful it is, if it's going to fall on your house. So, we're protected that way. And there are good technical measurements with regard to what constitutes what type of tree. And so I am enthusiastic that we've got to this point, and I look forward to the public hearing. So, thank you.
Chair Gussie. Yeah, I've been on this board for quite a while, and over the years, I've seen this, a tree ordinance given short shrift, and it just wasn't ready. Folks weren't ready to deal with it or to look at it. And I'm happy to see all the work that has gone in through this EAC. I've talked about it, action-oriented EAC. And of course, staff, Aaron, Tori was mentioned, Tori Snyder. And it's really, this is exciting for me to see this ordinance move the next step to a public hearing. We have been behind, I believe, in this area compared to other townships, and to see the aesthetic and environmental benefits of trees. I mean, this makes me really, yes, this is great, because my phone was just hit, and Julie is laughing here hysterically. but that's great. So all the beautiful words that I just said were for naught. No. It's good that I have a good sense of humor, and so do you. No, back to the aesthetics and environmental benefits. We've been behind. I'm thrilled tonight. After many, many years of seeing short shrift to this issue, and we're going to move it ahead to a public hearing, and I am grateful for the efforts of all the people who worked to move this forward, to get buy-in from many people throughout the township and have their voices heard on all sides of the tree preservation, woodland preservation issue. So thank you, and I apologize for the phone.
Thank you. Any other board comments? Any public comments?
Board again did a great job of explaining the benefits and the needs. Trees are so important for stormwater management. They are like the beginning defense that we have. And they're under a lot of threat from natural causes and from human activity. And so to the extent that we can manage some of that, it's a great thing. So I really appreciate all the work, an immense amount of work that the board, the township staff, township solicitor, people like Ann Murphy and Amber and the EAC have put into this. It's been fantastic. I'm glad it's moving to a public hearing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Of course, there are other comments. Thank you. I did a little research and found out some interesting statistics, and I'm going to bore everybody to death with the statistics, but I hope everybody will listen. Excuse me. I found out that 1 inch of rainfall over 1 acre equals 27,154 gallons of water. A tree, an average tree, will absorb 2,380 gallons of water in the course of a year. To absorb a single 1 inch rainfall requires 12 trees on a single acre. I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. We had a rainstorm on July 9th. The news report was King of Prussia received 6 4/10 inches of rain. We're close enough to King of Prussia to accept that we had 6 4/10 inches of rain also. Trout Creek watershed is 9 square miles. 6 4/10 inches of rainfall on 9 square miles equals 156,407,040 gallons of water. At 2,380 gallons of water per year, it would require 66,680 trees to absorb that one rainfall. And of course, that's not the only rainfall we have in a year. So we need a whole lot more trees than that. You might be interested to note that that amount of rain is enough to fill, oh, where is it now? I lost it. For 9,923,461,056 40-gallon bathtubs. That's more bathtubs than we have in Tredyffrin. So we need more trees, okay? Absolutely, we need more trees. I have a couple of questions on the actual ordinance, and I notice that under applicability, it says the requirements of this chapter shall apply for all lots that remove more than 5 trees measuring 6 inches. I don't remember, what does DBH mean? I can't remember now.
Diameter of breast height.
Thank you. Thank you. On rolling 12-month period. Does this include what we would term a private property like mine or yours or my next door neighbor or somebody? First of all?
Yes, it applies to the township.
I'm sorry?
Yes, it applies to
Every
township.
property, oh, that's, you're
Yes.
super, Aaron. Good for that. Good for you. Good for the whole group, because that takes care of a lot of other stuff. Let's see. Tree removal, now this is really important. Tree removal within the floodplains and wetlands shall not be permitted. I think that's excellent. Last week, I think it was last week, we had 4 days from early morning till late afternoon, 4 days in a row of chainsaws and wood chippers. Somebody was really doing a job on the property. Over a period of time, and that is uphill from where I live, which means I'm downstream from any water that flows that those trees would have absorbed, are all now going to come into my property. Thank you very much, neighbors. And I hope they'll listen. Well, maybe I shouldn't say, never mind. Trees also are excellent sound barriers. We live near the turnpike, and the decibel level at the at our property has gone up since people along the turnpike have cut down trees. And of course, the turnpike has cut down even more because of the expansion, and that's another kind of a problem. Trees remove air pollution. I want everybody who's in the listening audience and the township to hear this. Trees remove not only water from the ground, but pollution from the air. For example, a single maple tree growing along a roadside statistically will remove 60 milligrams of cadmium, 140 milligrams of chromium, 820 milligrams of nickel, 5,200 milligrams of lead in a single growing season. Now, a milligram is not very much. They're 454 grams in a pound. So a milligram is just a really little tiny bit, but you know we don't need a lot to do a lot of damage. The pills that we take for prescription drugs, for example, to cure a cold, an ordinary antibiotic or something, are only milligrams of whatever it is they put into them. And that's all it takes to kill a whole army of nasty germs. So just imagine what all of these multiple milligrams are doing to us. We know that bad air is harmful. We've been getting alerts because of a variety of reasons recently. So it's really important to have trees. They absorb water. They help prevent flooding. They reduce air pollution. They use carbon dioxide. And they return unusable water. Trees absorb water that they don't actually need, but it evaporates through the leaves and it goes right back into the atmosphere rather than into Trout Creek, which is very handy. We do appreciate that, and thank you so much. We support this ordinance.
All right, thank you. Looks like we have some more public comment.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jonathan Wilson. I'm a resident of Rose Lane, but I'm also a member of the EAC, and I worked a little bit on the Woodland Ordinance, and I actually just wanted to come and publicly thank the staff and everyone who's participated in this. This was really a collective effort, and I think I wanted to just underscore for the public and for people listening that this really results from a balancing act between the needs of the township, the needs of the residents of the township, and the need to steward the woodlands that we have here. And some of my neighbors have already made some comments that I just wanted to underscore, that trees are really beautiful in Tredyffrin. The character of our township is notable among our other townships. Trees also regulate our atmosphere, both on short and long time scales. But incredibly importantly, trees are our biological stormwater infrastructure. And we need to start thinking of them that way. And all the statistics you've heard have been correct. Mature trees can remove 40,000 gallons of water from the soil over the course of a year. That's 1/16 the amount of an Olympic swimming pool, so they could remove a tremendous amount of water from the soil. And that is water that is not going into your neighbors' houses and not going to the stormwater system. These benefits are also exponentially larger as the trees get older. And so in particular, conserving woodlands allows us to maintain this infrastructure at a high capacity for a long time. And I just want to underscore something, that if a large tree is removed today, even if it's replanted tomorrow, in this latitude, it takes us many decades for trees to reach their mature capacity. So a tree that you remove today, if you replant it tomorrow, it might not be at its full stormwater capacity until 2080 or 2090 or the 22nd century. And so there's a proverb in environmental science that we talk about, it comes up in my classes all the time, which is the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. The best time for a woodland protection ordinance would have been a long time ago, but the next best time is today. So thanks to everybody who's worked on this. I think this is a really great step forward for the township. Thanks.
Can I ask where you teach?
Yes, I'm an environmental scientist. I teach at Haverford College.
Oh, terrific. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Yes, I'll be quick because my neighbors have done such a great job speaking on behalf of the ordinance. My name's Emily Bell. I am the chair of the tree committee at the Old Forge Crossing Condominium Association, and also I was on the Stormwater Fee Advisory Council. And just to add to the many attributes that have already been discussed, with warm temperatures, the net cooling effect of a young, healthy tree is equivalent to 10 room-sized air conditioners operating 20 hours a day. That's from the USDA. And also from the Journal of Landscape, there was a study in Baltimore that showed a mature tree canopy can decrease crime by 12%. So I'm very happy that the Board of Supervisors is advancing this because it legitimizes the efforts that we've done in our community to preserve our canopy. And so thank you for your work on this.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'm Phil Whitmer from 112 Kinlan Road. That's in the Panhandle, almost New Jersey. And I just want to, I'm an associate member of the EAC. I'm also the Birdtown person. So I got to just add that we need trees because trees support native insects, and the native insects support native birds. And so we have to be growing more trees, not taking them out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments tonight? All right, come on up.
Hi, I'm Robin Mall. I live at 536 Bear Road. Every new young couple that comes into Bear Road loves it and then cuts down all the trees. It's been a heartbreak to watch Bear Road turn hot and treeless at the top of the hill. I think I've read as much as I could understand of the ordinance. I think it looks great. My concern is enforcement. People go and cut down trees all the time, and there are ordinances about plowing your backyard and leveling it, and people do it, and they do it without a permit. And I was happy to see that there are some pretty stiff penalties, and I wondered if the township is committed to, even if it's late, even if somebody reports a tree that's been cut down a week ago and they did it without the permission, that there'd be an opportunity to go back and exert that fine.
So there is a fine in the ordinance if you don't follow it, but the idea is if you cut a tree down, there is a replacement requirement. So if they are, again, meeting the intent of the ordinance by doing the replacement, that would not necessarily have a fine, but if they refuse, that would lead to additional civil proceedings that would require a fine.
Yeah, and I will add that, the township really does not have the staff or the will to essentially have people roaming the streets all the time, looking for trees that have gone missing. And I think that we do rely on residents to tell us, and then when residents tell us, then we can take action. But it's not that we're going to go around, looking for, we're not going to have, tree cops like, someone going around looking for parking meters that have expired, which we don't do anyway, but, things like that.
I will say that my experience in townships that have tree ordinances, particularly when there's wholesale trees being taken out, and usually it's more than just one or two when something's happening, is that the townships do a nice job. Someone does report it, and then the township is able to take enforcement.
Come on up.
Just a quick comment on that. Certainly rolling this out through the tree service companies can also be pretty effective. So there clearly are some well-known companies in the township who can play an important role here. So.
Speaking of New Jersey, Haddonfield requires its residents to apply for a permit to cut down a tree, which goes before the Board of Supervisors and passes on whether the tree will be cut or will not. It's not a replacement situation. It is right or wrong. It's going to happen or it's not going to happen. I would like to see more stringent rules put into place when it comes to especially the older trees. There are a couple of companies that are tree companies that have roamed the neighborhood over these years and have convinced homeowners that there is something deadly wrong with their tree because a branch has fallen, and using the scare techniques and taking the tree down. And it's never cut completely. And that's the clue, because the trunk of a very large oak is going to bring the tree cutting company thousands of dollars, because it is valuable lumber, especially the red oaks, which are all over our neighborhood. So we would like to see, attached to this, some kind of permitting process, some kind of, I know it might come down to a neighbor alerting the township and that a tree is being cut, which is too late. But what can this township do with this ordinance to improve its fallibility against unscrupulous tree businesses, ignorance on the part of the homeowners? What kind of information can be given to realtors who are working in the area? What can this township do to strengthen the wonderful existing ordinance? But unless there is a penalty, unless there is some kind of process that the homeowner must go through, or a tree company must go through because they have contracted with a customer, does that tree company have to make an application for tree removal to the township? There has to be something other than tattletale. You know, somebody's going to cut down tree and they get it done, and a tree replacement, as you just heard, is not effective for decades. What other process can be put into place to tighten the regulations and allow for enforcement?
Thank you. Make it quick, because I think you've been up for this
Just
one.
very quickly.
Okay.
Regarding what Mrs. Cunin just said, when a contractor is hired to do a construction job on your property, the contractor knows he's obliged to apply for permits prior to doing the construction. I don't see any problem with doing exactly the same thing regarding tree cutting, requiring the tree service to apply for a permit before the work is done, and that it all be done properly in that manner, just like it is done for any other contractor.
Thank you. Supervisor Humble, were you about to say something?
Oh, I was going to remark to Mrs. Coonan, some things, to your wife, sir, to Mrs. Coonan. Some things that I've seen other cities do is not in a punitive nature for trees to promote them, but they'll have tree giveaways at a certain time of year, like whether in the spring or the fall, a good time to plant a tree. So they'll have like 150 trees to give away. And, you know, how they designate whether it's first come, first serve, or if people sign up for one, then they come get a tree and they plant it. So that's a good way that's, you know, that could be considered. Another thing is, you know, folks, when your kid is born, plant a tree, you know, to commemorate their birth, somebody's birthday, things like that. We did that for our sons, and a lot of people don't know this, but we lived in another house on our same street several years ago when my first son was born. So when we passed it, I'm like, there's your tree, Ryan. You know, they still have our tree in their front yard, and it's nice, you know. So those are, you know, positive things that people can do, because getting into the punitive side, I think it'll get ugly for sure. And I think people want to plant trees, you know, so I think we should promote doing it for special occasions or whatnot. So that's just my suggestion. Thank you.
All right, any other comment? And then we can move forward with the vote, which is to, just a reminder, this is to bring it to the public hearing where we will discuss all this again. So we'll have plenty of opportunity for more conversation.
Yeah, I just have two things. One is a permit is required, just, Mrs. Coonan, just to, if you look at 2035 under requirements, there's a permit requirement there. So if you look at it, if you read the thing, there is a permit required when the chapter applies. But also to all the people who had positive comments about the tree ordinance, the public hearing is the 28th, it's not tonight, so you guys have to come back. Just to be clear, right? Just don't think this counted. I mean, I appreciate it, but yeah, because there's going to be people who are not on board with this. And so we need people to come and give us positive feedback. So thank you.
Talk into the mic for people at home.
Directly in response to the question about how can it be tightened up, there is the provision for removing a non-viable tree. If the substantial visible dieback had a percentage tied to it, and if the phrase "and trees in severe decline" was described in more arboricultural detail, I think that would go a long way towards arborists sort of like taking creative license with the terms.
Thank you. Any other comments?
There's no such thing as a weed tree.
All right.
Oh, I'm cutting that tree down because it's a weed.
All right, Mr. Coonan, if you're going to make a comment, it needs to be in the mic. But I think we're done with comments. I don't see any more online, so we will move to the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we are going to move to an associated motion, which is a motion to authorize staff to advertise a public hearing on August 28th, 2023 to consider and possibly adopt ordinance HR 471, amending the Code of Tredyffrin Township, Chapter 181, Subdivision and Land Development to coordinate the requirements of the proposed Chapter 203 Woodland Conservation. Ms. McPherson.
Thank you, Chair Gussie, members of the board. Yeah, so in coordination with the actual woodland ordinance, we wanted to kind of tie that in because there was woodland requirements in the Saldo subdivision and land development ordinance. In addition to that kind of tie-in, one of the I guess discussion points that came from the Stormwater Advisory Committee was there was a provision in there that if you had a subdivision that was 3 lots or less, you didn't have to do landscape requirements. So that is also being removed. So if you had a 2-lot subdivision now, you will be required to have plantings. I'm requesting that the board authorize the public hearing.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All right. Any board comment first? And any public comment? And since this is very similar to the last one, it will be specific to the difference here, I guess, the saldo. All right. Hearing no comments, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to authorize the Planning Commission and Chester County 247 reviews for changes to the zoning ordinance associated with Historic Commission associate memberships. Ms. McPherson.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Freed, I think, mentioned this in his liaison report, but as part of the Historic Commission, they had requested that there be associate members. The way that committee operates, it's actually within the zoning code, which is a little different, where I know he mentioned the EAC. The EAC is in the administrative code, which would only require board action, but in this case, because it is in the zoning code, we have to go through the Planning Commission and the Chester County 247 review. So we're requesting that the board authorize us to do that.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a second. Any board comment?
Just briefly, as I mentioned during the liaison report, the associates program is basically identical to what was enacted for the EAC. An associate will help with research and develop future historic events, and the need is great now, particularly with the upcoming 250th commemoration of the Declaration of Independence in 2026.
Thank you.
So I'd like to say that I think from the EAC's point of view, the associate program works very well because there's sort of a process by which, ultimately, we have to realize that the members of the EAC, the Historical Commission, all the different boards, they're volunteer powered. It's residents of the township that donate their time and effort to actually make things work. And the way that I've seen it work in the EAC is people come in, they volunteer, they attend the meetings, they find something they're passionate about, they do something, then they sort of move on and say, I'm ready to become an associate member. And then they move into the, to become an associate member, which is a non-voting member. And then after some time on the associate member role, they move in to become regular members. And I think it's just a way that it's a model that works well. It's a way that people can come in and decide that they're interested in it. They can check out their passions, and I think that it's great that the Historical Commission is adopting the same model.
Thank you. Any other board comments? Any public comments? All right, hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Now we have a motion to approve the final release of $100,592.38 for Berkeley Townhomes LLC, balance remaining $0. Mr. Burgo.
Madam Chair and members of the board, this release is for the 2022 Berkeley Townhome development on Berkeley Road. The work has been completed and final inspection was done. We're recommending release in the dollar amount that was identified tonight.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comments? Any public comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We move to new matters. Do we have any board member new matters?
Madam Chair, I'm not a board member, but I do have an update from you for our plastic ordinance. As you recall, Cup of Dreams Coffee and Tea owner, Mr. Zhao, you'd asked him to give an update. He sent an email update, so I'm just going to let you know that he found one vendor that carries the boba straws, but the inventory is not guaranteed. So he's continuing to work with customers on feedback between the plastic and paper straws. He's continuing to search for other sources to get the paper boba straws. So he just wanted to give you an update on the status of that.
Thank you.
I had a comment on that, which is that, given that places like New Jersey and California essentially have had the requirement for a while, one thing that he might the owner might do is just call up a couple of places, in New Jersey and California that are complying and find out what the vendors are, because it's not as if there isn't a vendor. He just needs to find the vendors.
All right, any other board member new matters?
I just wanted to call attention to something. We had the swastikas that had showed up in the township in Chesterbrook and Gateway Shopping Center. And somebody posted pictures that this past Saturday, around like noon through about 2 o'clock, there were 3 or 4 individuals who were standing on the bridge that goes over 76 on Valley Forge Road, and they were holding some signs, anti-Semitic signs, and somebody else had a big sign for the SS. And somebody took some pictures. It did say they reported them to the police. I'm not sure what we can do there, if that's covered by their free speech and it's public road, or is people not allowed to hang out there on the roadway. But I just want to make people aware that some folks, and these are adults, I know at least with the graffiti, at least one of those instances involved a teen student who was in middle school, and maybe the next one did too, but these are very definitely adults who showed up in our township. So I don't know what we can do about it. That's all.
Thank you. Any other board member new matters? Any citizen new matters tonight? Come on up and state your name. You have to come up to the mic because we've got people at home.
Yes, hi, my name is Judith Franchotti. There's Judith Franchotti. I live at 111 Devon Road, and one of our neighbors is on the line now, and she's got her hand raised, I see. We want to talk about 108 Darby, which is an illegal apartment building in our neighborhood that has defied the will of the zoning board, defied the will of the courts, and has doubled down and in fact expanded the illegal apartment building. And so I'm sure you will acknowledge our neighbor, Allison. She's got her hand up and she can give you much more detail about what's happening. And several of our neighbors are here today. We're all very upset. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Russell, if you want to speak.
Hi, this is Allison Russell. I live at 106 Darby, and this is my husband, Adam Russell.
Hi, and I want to appreciate the time and acknowledge Madam Chair and the board for taking time in the summer evening to hear our concerns. We will be brief. The issues at 108 Darby have been building over the past 3 years with no resolution, starting with the company illegally wiring and converting the property to apartment units in a residential zoned area, but have now gotten to the point where the ownership company has created a 4th unit on the property. That is a family with a baby. We're living in the attic of a detached garage, and then with no plumbing. So, this is an uninhabitable space and is not fit for anyone to live in. The ownership company we see is clearly exploiting this family and others on the property. About 15 people currently live at this address, which is zoned residential R1. Is the wiring of the garage under proper permits? We're worried about potential fire hazard, as is, just a few feet from our property with multiple trees and other houses around. And from our point of view, without escalating fines or further actions against the owners, they will continue to flagrantly ignore the zoning laws and exploit, the current and future residents. Over the past 2 years, some of our neighbors are in attendance. They can talk about what they have seen, but, from multiple garbage complaints and citations, more than 1 month without garbage, multiple noise complaints from multiple neighbors, cars parked all over the backyard as, the current parking cannot accommodate 3 units worth of residents. The sewer is not, able to handle all those current residents. And then police had to break down a door after an alleged rape from an alleged felon living in the unit. Other neighbors will share their experiences, but again, without escalating fines or further actions against these owners, we see them as, continue to flagrantly ignore the zoning laws and exploit those residents, culminating in this situation where a family was living there without plumbing in the attic of a garage. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out and sharing that with us today. I know this is a legal matter, so Mr. McKenna, will you
Sure.
respond?
And thank you, Dr. Gussie. So for the members that were here this evening, we have heard you. The information had been relayed most recently through Supervisor Holt, who's not here, but obviously the township had been aware of this property for some time. The property owners had applied for zoning relief, which was denied. They appealed. The appeal was denied. The township has taken some zoning enforcement action against them. Unfortunately, the zoning enforcement process isn't a terribly effective method of enforcement because it seeks to get a civil fine. And so it's just for a money judgment, and that oftentimes is not a catalyst to get the property owner to take action. And in this case, that is the case. Having said that, and in discussions with the board prior to the meeting, we are going to ratchet up the legal action, and we will be seeking to enforce and compel compliance through the Court of Common Pleas, not just through zoning enforcement. So we're actually going to take a two-pronged attack to get this done as quickly as possible. So I would expect in the next 30 days that we'll be filing for an injunction and a court order to compel compliance with the zoning. So I'll have hopefully the full force and effect of a court order. If they don't comply, I have contempt proceedings. We're going to have a whole lot more options that are available. So the township is taking it very seriously. Bear with us for the next couple of weeks because we have to pull all of the information together to get that thing filed. But you have not gone unheard. And in fact, it was a priority for the board before the meeting this evening. So we will be moving forward with that in due course.
All right, thank you. Any other citizen who matters, come on up. Oh, you may come up. You have to speak into the mic, though, for people at home.
Sure, we'll speak into the mic. Martin Capurro, 107 Darby, Paoli. So everything I heard from my neighbors is spot on. I'll provide a little bit more context because it was a single-family home. I think it's Allison. The Russells moved in there, I think, assuming that these were all single-family homes nearby and zoned that way. And yeah, when this was purchased, the new owner just rather surprised us all, and we saw construction, and all of a sudden it was apartments. And that's the part that really gets at us, because we did raise that immediately. It was listed on Zillow as apartments. It was listed on other real estate online locations as apartments. So the intent was clear, but when asked by anyone officially, I think the owner was just saying it was just a home, they were doing improvements. And so it has been going on for quite a while, and just as we raised the issue, the biggest concern was, is it actually going to change the neighborhood? We moved there for that reason, our kids play there. The Russells are literally right next door, like very close. And it has increased the number of cars. There's a lot of people living there. I think latest count is like 18 or something. So it really does change the nature of the neighborhood. Yes, there was an arrest there for an alleged rape, and that's concerning, and illegal firearms. We've had a pit bull that roams our property on occasion, and that's dogs crossing Darby, right? And barking, late into the night, parties into the weekend. This is just very uncharacteristic of everything else we see around the neighborhood. And so for us, that's a huge concern. But I've heard tonight over and over again, recurring themes is that there's zoning and then there's difficulty in enforcing the zoning. And that's what we're hoping gets ratcheted up, not just for this. Obviously, I hope this is resolved. But I would just ask that, it's best to kind of get in front of these things, whether it's trees or whether it's zoning. But I did have one question, which is with respect to the fines, that's great. But what does that mean to enforce compliance in a case like this? Because the work's been done, there are apartments there. Obviously, we never thought it would even get this far, but it has. But what does compliance mean in the eyes of Tredyffrin?
Compliance means that it has to be used in conformity with the permitted uses in that district. So single-family, detached, whatever the other R1 uses may be, but not multifamily, because multifamily is not permitted. So compliance means compliance with the zoning ordinance in terms of the uses. The zoning laws allow us to seek a fine as a way to compel them to do so. Thus far, that has not had the intended effect. So in addition to continuing to go for a fine, we're instead now going to go to the Court of Common Pleas and seek an order to compel them to cease the use and comply with the zoning ordinance.
Good. And I don't want to take up time necessarily, but does that mean, does comply then mean that they undo the making that of apartments? Because today I guess they're kind of piece part. I've never been in there, but they're separate apartments. Does it become a single family home again? Or does that just mean they rent it out to one family? And, I just don't understand. I'm trying to understand what that means.
I think we'll cross that bridge when we get there, because as we sit here now, I can't tell you the extent of whatever changes have been made or in the home, and those which may or may not have required a permit. So I think we'll cross that when we get there, but if they lease it out long-term to a family, that would be allowed because it's a single-family use of the home. Yeah. So whatever we can do to get it to comply as a use that's permitted only in that district, that's what the intention is of the township.
Understand. And the last comment would be, we just get a little bit concerned that if it's not reversed from apartments, then you just may have someone that quote unquote says, oh yeah, we're all one family. And if there weren't already 18 people living there, I probably wouldn't have that concern, but honestly, nothing would surprise us.
Understood.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I think Chief Beatty wanted to make a quick statement too.
Yeah, I just wanted to, what I could offer from the situation that Supervisor Humble mentioned. The officers did engage that group, verify that there was nothing criminal that law enforcement could engage with. We've watched and monitored the activity. This was actually probably as a result of an earlier display that these individuals and some other people did at Valley Forge, on Valley Forge up in the park, which happens from time to time. And I believe they wanted to get their message to a broader audience and took their banners to the overpass sign for the turnpike. But the officers did monitor and watch what was going on to make sure, things were, I guess, as safe as could be. We don't like it. It's ridiculous, but it's their right to do what they did that day, and the officers did monitor, and they moved along in a timely fashion after that.
Thank you. Any other citizen new matters tonight? All right. Our next meeting is August 28th, 2023. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.